Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you can please take your seats, the program will begin in just 1 minute. Please find your seats so we can begin the program.
Don't worry, be happy now. Don't worry, be happy. Don't worry, be happy. Don't worry. Don't worry, be happy. Don't worry, don't do it. Be happy. Put a smile on you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the inaugural JNS International Policy Summit. I'll just ask for one more round of applause if you've been having a good time so far. Over the next couple of days, we will hear from influential leaders shaping Israel's future on the global stage. But first, a little bit about JNS. Back in 2011, JNS was founded through the foresight, vision, and the ongoing support of Joshua and Amelia Katzen and Russell Pergament. I am honored to invite my dear friends, Josh and Amelia Katzen, founders and publishers of Jewish News Syndicate, to present the summit's opening remarks.
Welcome. We are proud and pleased to see so many brilliant people here for the Jewish News Syndicate's first annual summit, diplomatic summit. We are living in a world where journalism has lost its way. News outlets repeat the lies of Hamas and Iran and leftists, all the bad guys, without so much as a single fact check. And then they repeat the lies over and over and over again, even after they've been retracted. As Winston Churchill said, a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on. Winston Churchill didn't even know the internet. Today, a lie gets all the way around the world before the truth gets its pants on. The lie gets repeated ad nauseum. It gets amplified by the people we used to trust. Well, I can tell you firsthand, JNS does not wait to put its pants on. JNS wakes up with its pants on. It sleeps with its boots on. I don't think Alex Trayman, our CEO, or Jonathan Tobin, our editor-in-chief, even go to sleep. JNS is reporting the truth from day one, from minute one. Its boots are stomping on the truth, lies about our magnificent IDF. It's stomping on the lies of campus anti-Semites. It's stomping on the lies about judicial reform. It's stomping on the lies of Bibi's alleged corruption. And it's stomping on the lies about so-called settler violence. JNS doesn't do this alone. We are working with everyone in this room to report the truth. Without the truth, we are at the mercy of liars and tyrants. We have no democracy, we have no justice, we have no homeland. Thankfully, we have JNS and its wonderful warriors, reporters, columnists, podcasters, editors, videographers, administrators, and fundraisers. With their efforts and your help, we will keep stomping on the lies of our enemies and getting the truth out before they even get their pants on.
Good evening. I'm Josh Katzen. As Amelia said, I'm one of the founders, and I'm the publisher of JNS. Thank you. I must say it's a tremendous pleasure to be surrounded by so many intelligent people. I'm from Boston. My senator is Elizabeth Warren, if you know what I mean. I'm very happy to be here. It's a big difference. JNS is the only Israel-based news service that is not dedicated to undermining Israel and destroying it from within. And the others are. The rest of the media are anti-Bibi, anti-Trump, anti-sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, pro-Palestinian state, and supporters of government by the judiciary, the security services, and the IDF. JNS, on the other hand, supports none of that. JNS will continue to be a platform for those who support the elected government of Israel and Israel's right to sovereignty over its homeland. We will publish writers who are willing to shine a light on the unelected Supreme Court, the unelected Shin Bet, and those in the IDF who think that they are the real government, while having nothing but respect for the brave soldiers of the IDF who are defending Israel every day. And we will never publish writers who can't tell the difference between self-defense by Israel and genocide by the Palestinians. We, Israel, and the Western civilization that was the gift of the Jews, are in a fight for our lives. And JNS is and will continue to be the home for those who want Israel to win that fight. Thank you very much for your support. We will continue to support you.
Thank you, Josh and Amelia. Our next speaker is a minister in the Israeli government and an influential member of the ruling Likud party. In particular, he's been making sure that taxpayer funds are not going towards cultural events or projects that undermine Israeli and Jewish values. Please join me in welcoming Israeli Minister of Culture and Sports, Mickey Zohar.
Hi everyone, honored guests, distinguished participants, dear friends from Israel and around the world, good evening to you all, afternoon. We gather here today in Jerusalem, the holy city, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to address you today during this significant and emotional week between Holocaust Day, Remembrance Day, and Israel Memorial Day, and on the eve of our Independence Day. These are days when the Israeli heart beats with double intensity, with sorrow and with pride, with remembrance and revival, with grief and with hope. But this year, more than any other, these emotions feel sharper, more painful, and more real than ever. Since October 7th, the state of Israel has been facing one of the most difficult times in its history. An horrific attack on innocent civilians that were murdered in cold blood. Families were shattered, and more than 50 of our citizens are still being held hostage in Gaza. As we remember the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust, we cannot ignore the terrible truth that even today, in 2025, Jews are still being killed simply because they are Jews. History is not just a part of the past. It is alive, and it demands from us moral clarity, courage, and a deep sense of national responsibility. As Minister of Culture and Sports, it is my duty not only to promote Israel's creativity, but to ensure that Israel's story is heard. In a world where public debates is still often twisted and where our legitimacy is challenged, we must speak the truth with pride, with conviction, and above all, with a clear voice. Even in a time of war, we choose to create. In the face of threats, we choose to live. And on days when we remember our fallen, we also choose to believe. I welcome this important summit, which brings together true partners, people who understand that this is not only Israel's fight, but a challenge for all who believe in freedom, in justice, and peace. Thank you. The Jewish people have always stood strong against the darkest of times through identity, values, and determination. And that is exactly what we will continue to do today. From this place, from Jerusalem, I call on the world, stand with us, not out of fear, but out of understanding, not in hatred, but in hope, because Israel's fight is a fight for truth, for life, and for the right to exist. And now, I would like to invite you to enjoy later a very special performance, a culture performance, a moving musical tribute by Israeli singer Hagit Yasso. She will perform today. She was a winner of A Star is Born in Israel. By the way, also my son won this contest. Yeah. And she is a resident in the city of Sderot. On the horrific morning, on October 7th, Hagit was a victim of the terror attack. She went out for her morning run when the attack began, and she was forced to hide from the terrorists who tried to break into the shelter where she and others were hiding there for 7 long hours. That day, 4 of her running partners were murdered. Hagit herself believed she was saved thanks for her keeping of Shabbat. Tonight, in her performance, the music performance, Hagit brings us a living testimony of memory, of resilience, and of the unbreakable spirit of the Israeli people. Thank you, and have a good evening.
שומר ישראל
Wow, Chagit, that was amazing. Amazing. Thank you. Before I begin speaking tonight, I'd like to take 30 seconds to thank JNS founders and publishers Josh and Amelia Katzen and Russell Pergament for your vision and support. Our board members, all of our donors and partners, Summit Chairman Richard Heidemann, our Summit Coordinator Avia Asner, Content Director Eli Piepsh, Orly Rachamim, the team at Think Content, and everyone who has worked to make this inaugural JNS International Policy Summit one of the most important and consequential events of the year. Many people believe that the horrors of October 7th took place because of a string of bad decisions in the hours and days leading up to the massacre. They're not wrong, but they are also exceptionally wrong. October 7th took place because of decades of wrong-headed conceptia, strategic failings, misconceptions about our enemies, and more importantly about ourselves, our role as a nation and as a people. The list of failings is long, but these include the ill-fated Oslo Accords, the disengagement from Gaza in 2005. Many people may remember that Ariel Sharon first publicly announced his plan for Israel's unilateral disengagement in 2003 during a speech at the Herzliya Conference. In fact, many wrong-headed, agenda-driven policies for the State of Israel have been proposed, discussed, and reinforced at policy conferences organized by the leaders of this conceptia. Failed thinking has infected the upper echelons of our security establishment, our intelligence, and our politics. But it has also infected our legal system, banking, tax codes, healthcare, and even our education system, where many of our children are not taught the basics of Jewish history and culture. And there have also been major failings within the diaspora, particularly among major legacy Jewish organizations, which raise the lion's share of funds from Jewish philanthropists. Yet despite billions raised, communities are as vulnerable as ever to assimilation and anti-Semitism. But despite the problems, all is not lost, not even close. The Jewish people's response to one of the worst days in our history, October 7th, has given the greater Jewish nation hope. The war gains have been immense, from assassinations of terror leaders in Gaza, Beirut, and even Tehran, to the grim beeper episode, to the recovery of 196 hostages so far. The fighting spirit of Israel's soldiers and reserves and their brave families inspire millions. Large and small philanthropists alike are now making sure that the greatest needs receive urgent funding. And some of the most unlikely voices have turned into the Jewish people's greatest advocates. And even the anti-Semitism that has reared its head in cities around the world, and particularly on American campuses, has brought Jews back into alignment and back into brotherhood. Together, the Jewish people and our many allies around the world are proving, through our resilience and our unwavering faith, that Am Yisrael Chai is not only the past and the present, it is also our future. The tragedy of October 7th has now become the obligation of October 8th. The Jewish people are now in the midst of a generational opportunity to make major course corrections, and it is incumbent on all of us here in the room today to play our roles in this immense challenge. Nobody can forget the calls in the months leading up to October 7th by those organizing mass protests, seeking to divide our nation, suggesting that Israel will find itself in a civil war, or that the current Jewish Commonwealth, now on its 77th birthday, will collapse, as previous Jewish Commonwealths did by the time it reaches 80. Let me state it for the record here, loudly and clearly. The protesters are wrong. The Jewish state of Israel is here to stay for eternity. Israel will prosper because of the strength and the unity of the Jewish people, because of the bravery of our soldiers, but most importantly, because of our faith in the Almighty God of Israel, who has brought us back to our eternal homeland. From the four corners of the earth, who has revived our spirit and our ancient language, has blessed us and has caused our desert to bloom. And when the dust settles and this war is over, let me tell you, the Jewish people will undoubtedly be stronger than ever before. Yet even today, there are forces among our people who promote shifting back to the failed conception of October 6th. Those voices, they don't want Israel to win the war. They don't want Israel to emerge with strength or to express its sovereign rights in its ancestral homeland. These voices deny the unique character and challenges of the Jewish state. Among those voices are those warning against what they call the quote-unquote tyranny of the majority. And who is this majority? It is you, and it is the citizens of Israel who feel disillusioned by the policies that drove Israel headfirst into October 7th. But rather than the tyranny of the majority, there is now the responsibility of the majority to act wisely, to address the failings, and to place the Jewish people on a new trajectory. This inaugural summit has not only been created to identify the failings that led to October 7th, the summit was designed to be impactful, forward-thinking, and cutting-edge. At this two-day summit, you will hear over 120 voices of those who have been fighting for Israel and the Jewish people. They will present here the ideas, concepts, and most importantly, the policies that will help chart a new course to steer the Jewish people through the current challenges and into a better, stronger, and more secure future. This JNS International Policy Summit is a major milestone in the forceful trajectory of the Jewish News Syndicate. This news agency was created to give voice to a different point of view than what you would typically read in the media. But here's the catch. JNS represents the viewpoints of the majority of Israeli voters, the majority of the most engaged Jews in the diaspora, and the majority of Israel supporters around the globe. Most mainstream media has been weaponized by Israel's enemies as a tool of war to delegitimize Israel. And sadly, most Jewish media are doing no better. They're harming Israel's diplomatic standing and our relationship with Jewish communities around the world. And they're doing this in their attempt to, quote, correct what they believe are the bad decisions of Israeli voters by constantly delegitimizing the Jewish state's democratically elected government. JNS has been created as the antidote to legitimize the state of Israel and to legitimize it in its struggle against its enemies and anti-Semites around the world and in its efforts to emerge as an economic, military, technological, and moral superpower in the Middle East and on the world stage. JNS is writing history in real time. Over the last few years, and certainly since October 7th, JNS has demonstrated itself to be among the most important platforms for the debate on Israel's present and its future. JNS exists as a reader-supported, nonprofit organization because we're mission-driven. We write what we write because it is right, and we do it day after day after day. And as this summit indicates, we are growing, and we are growing fast. In the coming years, I have no doubt that JNS will emerge as the largest and most impactful Jewish media agency. Further, with the power of our ideologically strong and committed community of readers and financial supporters we are building, I am confident that JNS will be one of the most powerful and important communal organizations in the Jewish world. Together with all of you, and over the next 2 days, we will set out to correct the failings that led to October 7th and to build on the responsibility of October 8th. Israel and the Jewish people's new policy course begins today. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I got it on paper too. Israel's diplomatic challenges have grown in the last several years, and particularly since October 7th. Our next speaker is on the front lines of repairing and strengthening Israel's diplomacy. Perhaps more importantly, he stepped in to join Israel's government following the resignation of left-wing members in the middle of a seven-front war to give Israel a large, stable, right-wing majority government. He now sits down on the stage with Summit Chairman Richard Heidemann to share critical insights on Israel's diplomatic challenges and strategic priorities. Please welcome to the stage Israel's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Gideon Sa'ar.
Mr. Foreign Minister, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting. Good evening.
As Alex indicated, you're responsible for maneuvering, for managing, for working with both Israel's diplomatic challenges, but I'm going to add an additional word: Israel's diplomatic opportunities. In the challenges phase, Israel has been for many years under attack at the United Nations, at the International Court of Justice, at the International Criminal Court, and all of that predates October 7th. Tell us, if you would, how is your ministry under your direction addressing Israel's response to the legal warfare that has been launched against not just the state of Israel, but the nation of Israel, the Jewish people, and key members of the Israeli government, including but not limited to the Prime Minister and the former Defense Minister?
So, let me give you the last example. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., we'll begin the discussion on The Hague in the last claim against Israel, initiated by Norway, adopted by the UN General Assembly, with regard to the UNRWA legislation and commitments of Israel to humanitarian international organizations as a whole, and so on and so forth. But that will be the fourth time that Israel will be brought to this court since the beginning of the war. I don't think there is any precedent for a democratic country or even to a non-democratic country to be brought time and again to the ICJ when legal procedure is the disguise for a political moves with a clear attempt to delegitimize Israel and to undermine its right for self-defense. So our decision is tomorrow. We are not going to be there on The Hague. But I will have a press conference on 11 a.m., and I will accuse the UN and UNRWA, which is supposed to be the case in the ICJ, because Israel shouldn't be on the defendant,
In the dock.
whatever. Israel should accuse, and that's what we are going to do. And of course, we are engaging these challenges, and it is very complicated. And as we also, just last Thursday, the appeals of the ICC, they said something very interesting, that the rush way in which an arrest warrants were issued against the Prime Minister, against the former Defense Minister, was done even without checking the basic issue of jurisdiction, of the authority of the court. Because if the ICC would have checked that, very easily they would have found that they don't have any authority over Israel. Israel is a country which is not a member state in the ICC. We hadn't signed on the Rome Statute as much as the US hadn't. And it is ridiculous to have this kind of procedure against a non-member state there. So, but I think it's not a coincidence that they, and I don't want to say what will be finally, but I will say that there is only one conclusion which is possible from the pure legal point of view. And I believe that the sanctions and the executive order of President Trump was very effective in demonstrating that this kind of a ridiculous political institute, so-called court, cannot go on with the same methods. And I believe we have a very good partner in Washington. And yeah. And we had just lately another partners, like Hungary just announced. Hungary was the first European country to state they are quitting from the ICC. I came there on February. I just spoke with my colleague on the issue. They took a very strong and moral stance on that. I praise them for that. And we continue to do hard work in order to battle. It is totally connected to our right for self-defense, because all this legal warfare is aimed on how to undermine Israel's rights for self-defense. So we should be very tough and wise engaging with that.
A follow-up, if I may, on both your key points. First, regarding the International Court of Justice, we all know that in 2003, the UN General Assembly referred to the International Court of Justice the question of the legal consequences of Israel's construction of what is called the apartheid wall, which is really, we all know, 95 or 96% offense. In 2004, even though Israeli courts we're dealing with the very issue of the impact of that fence, that wall, that terrorism fence. The International Court of Justice in July of 2004 labeled Israel to be in violation of international law. Although that was an advisory opinion, not only has that not gone away, it has become accepted by everyone. How are you and your ministry addressing this terrible blasphemy against Israel and the Jewish people?
So here's the thing. Instead of dealing with countries without a rule of law, without an independent judiciary, they deal with Israel. But the truth is that the Supreme Court of Israel dealt with that and even sometimes changed the route of the fence, of the security fence there. So there was no point, and this is how they are undermining another principle of international law, which is complementary, because it is only relevant when you have a country that don't deal itself with those issues from the legal point of view. And now, just to understand, because we are speaking about the so-called courts, but eventually the Palestinians, with their political partners, they are behind all of this. And what they are trying to do, they are trying to minimize our ability to fight in the political battle. They, for example, sent the ICJ just previous year to deal with the legality of the occupation. We say there is no occupation, it is our land. We cannot occupy that. And it's not an occupied territories. At max, it's a disputed territories. But they're trying consistently to buy legal processes to get political results. But they will not get these political results. We said very clearly that from the minute we legislated the UNRWA laws, we are not going to cooperate with an organization that was fully infiltrated by Hamas, which so many workers of this organization participated in the 7th of October massacre, when we know Hamas operated and still operating from UNRWA installations in Gaza, like schools and other places. And so instead of taking care of UNRWA, the UN sent us to the ICJ, but we will not participate in this circus.
Mr. Foreign Minister, continuing, long before October 7th, at the United Nations, Israel was accused of being an apartheid, racist, criminal, genocidal state. Genocidal was a minor portion, but following October 7th, genocide with a big G became the mantra. It became the talk everywhere, from T-shirts to newscasters. As you see it, how can Israel, how will Israel address both the challenge but also the opportunity to tell the truth to the world that Israel is neither an apartheid, racist, criminal, nor genocidal state?
Just tell the truth. This is what I'm going to do tomorrow. Let's see. Israel, in this war, we were attacked from 7 different fronts. We hadn't initiated a war in any of these fronts. Not with Yemen, not with Iran, not with Iraq, not with Lebanon. We retaliated. Maybe we retaliated successfully, and this is the thing that bothers those who attacked us. But they had the genocidal intention. What they did on October 7 was genocide. It is very clear to see. So they start to describe us or what we are doing there as a genocide immediately after they tried to commit genocide against Jews, and quite successfully. I said previous week, which we had the Holocaust Day. What is the difference? What is the real difference between the Nazis and Hamas? Only the abilities. Because if Hamas could have slaughtered anybody in this country, this is their convention, this is their charter, you can read it, it's publicly, they are see it as a religious commandment according to their interpretation to kill Jews. It is a religion commandment to wipe Israel off the map, not in certain borders. According to their belief, Israel cannot be sovereign on any inch of this country, of this land, because it's a sacred Waqf territory. So Israel is under a genocidal attacks. We hadn't removed all the threats yet. We're still facing challenges, even today. But we were able, in a way, to restore the image of Israeli power in the region and in global, generally speaking, that was so hurted after October 7.
Thank you. Two final questions, Mr. Foreign Minister. First, relating still to Gaza, the people who lived in Gaza, those who have family elsewhere in the world, those who have expressed a desire for freedom, those who have expressed a desire to leave, are being assaulted not just by Hamas, but by countries around the world who are saying, you don't have any right to leave. Even though refugees from every country can leave, you cannot leave. And how do you address the issue of the threat that Israel will be more accused of genocide because of an approach toward the voluntary transfer of Gazan citizens to elsewhere in the world?
Well, first of all, it's going in the same line that Arab countries mainly, but also not only them, use the Palestinians, weaponize them against the state of Israel. For example, legal definition of refugees is 25 years. Somehow Palestinians are refugees for 77 years. They have their own refugees agency. How come? So, because it was very clear that the Arab states shouldn't let them citizenship or an ability really to integrate in order that they will still desire to go back to Israel. So, in the same manner, they are trying to deny the rights of the Gazans, their free will or free choice to immigrate. And I'm saying very clearly, it's under two conditions. First, that a certain person or a certain family wants to immigrate from its free will and free choice, they should have been given the same right as any other person on earth from Syria, from Afghanistan, or from any other place. And the second condition should be that there is a state which is really to accept on the other side. But if these two conditions are met, and I believe there is a chance for that, then it's the most moral and humane things to do for someone who thinks they are human beings and not seeing them only as a weapon against Israel.
Thank you. One word, if you would, about the Abraham Accords. What's the future?
Well, I first of all want to say the most important thing is to realize that today, after a year and a half, which was very tough war with an effect on Arab public opinion, none of the countries that signed the Abraham Accords, or none of the previous countries who had signed peace agreements with Israel, none of them retreated. All of them kept the agreements. Maybe some of them went to engage under the radar more than normal times. But I think it's very important to realize that, because this demonstrates that they define their own interest in normal connections with the State of Israel. And I believe personally that mainly after this war will be over, the camp of Abraham Accords, the camp of normalization in this region will go wider, just against the intention of Hamas when they initiated the attack on October 7.
Thank you, Mr. Foreign Minister.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to welcome Norm Coleman and Matt Brooks from the Republican Jewish Coalition, who led a delegation to the March of the Living this past week in Poland on Yom HaShoah, and here to Yerushalayim. We welcome both dear friends to the podium.
Good evening. I'm Senator Norm Coleman, National Chairman of the Republican Jewish Coalition. Winston Churchill once said, if the people have the heart of the lion, and I simply have the luck to give the roar. I give the roar for a growing Republican base that stands strongly in support of Israel. Our CEO, Matt Brooks, at the Republican convention asked the crowd, who stands with Israel? And there was a huge roar. That line couldn't be asked at a Democrat gathering, at a Democrat convention. Chuck Schumer, the showman, never mentioned Israel in his remarks at the Democrat convention. As I say this, I say it, though, one, with a sense of pride, but also a sense of deep concern. So that today, 83% of Republicans strongly support Israel, 33% of Democrats. A majority of Americans, there's a Pew poll in April and in March, and a Gallup poll in April, in which a majority of Americans today have an unfavorable view of Israel. So I say this saying we have a challenge. I want all Americans to stand in support of Israel. And the most telling stat may be that baby boomers, my generation, okay, 85% of us stand strong in support of Israel. And yet, baby boomers, give it a round of applause. I was at Woodstock, and I did inhale, by the way. But Gen Z, a majority of Gen Z have an unfavorable impression of Israel. And my friends, I think the reason for that is that we're losing the digital war. Okay, they're getting their information from TikTok and whatever it is, and we're losing that war. When you think about it, the masters of the universe are Jews. You know, we've got Altman and AI, we got Zuckerberg, we got Sergey Brin, we got the group across the board. Jan Combs, founded WhatsApp. It's us. And we have to figure out a way to win the digital battle. Amelia, we got to get our digital sneakers on so that the truth can prevail over the lies. And when we do that, the future of Israel will be stronger because a majority of all Americans will support Israel. We'll make that happen. We have to make it happen. Thank you. Baruch Hashem. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Coleman. As he had mentioned, I was fortunate enough to give an address at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee this year. I held up a now famous Trump kippah to a crowd of 20,000 people, and I said, who stands with Israel? And the place literally erupted. Spontaneously, people had Israeli flags. That's the face of the Republican Party. But because that's the face of the Republican Party, and because we have the most pro-Israel president ever in history in Donald J. Trump, I could stand before you today, along with Senator Coleman, to say that we proudly represent the pro-Israel party. But we can't turn our backs on what's happening. And one of the things that I want to raise with you today is that we have an obligation to be vigilant, because the cancer that has taken over the Democratic Party with the woke progressive left, with Bernie Sanders, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and the protesters on the college campuses, we're starting to see the beginning cells of that cancer start to take hold in the Republican Party, and we cannot allow that to happen. The Republican Party has got to combat the rise of neo-isolationism in our party. Those voices on the woke right have got to know that if you are MAGA, you are also pro-Israel. Donald Trump is the definition of MAGA. Donald Trump is the most pro-Israel president in history. Our party is pro-Israel. And if you want to try and argue that Israel is not an ally and Israel is a liability, well, let me just tell you, you're going to have to go through the Republican Jewish coalition first. And so that is a battle to come, and I just wanted to say a special thanks to Josh and Amelia and Alex and the JNS team for allowing us the opportunity to be here. We've got a great delegation from our board and our major supporters from the RJC. Thank you for making the trip. Have a great conference. Thank you all for having us.
One of the most powerful voices defending Israel in the mainstream media, first as official international spokesperson of the IDF, and even still as a private citizen, please now welcome Lieutenant Colonel in Reserves Jonathan Conricus to the stage to shed light on the damaging role of UN peacekeepers in the region.
Thank you, Alex. Shalom, everyone. A pleasure to be here. So I won't be speaking about UNRWA. I won't be speaking about the ICJ or the ICC. I'll leave that to subject matter experts, and I'm sure that we can discuss their future as well. I will speak, however, about UN peacekeeping, and I'll tell you my perspective. My perspective is one of a belief that I think there is a need for a global government of sorts. There is a need for peacekeeping, in a sense, and it does have value, and it should exist and help in troubled areas. However, I'll tell you what the current situation is and what I think should be done, because in my mind, we are very far from where we should be when it comes to UN peacekeeping, specifically regarding Israel, but not only limited to Israel. I was the first Israeli officer to be seconded to the UN. I served on behalf of the IDF at UN headquarters for about 3 years between 2014 and 2017. I also liaised with UN peacekeeping forces, both UNIFIL in Lebanon and UNDOF on the Golan Heights and UNSO here in Jerusalem. These are the names of 3 peacekeeping forces that have been active in Israel since 1948 and the mid-70s. So I speak from personal, professional knowledge and experience, and that's why I think I can share a few comments about the current situation. My first day at UN headquarters was a very cold and abnormally cold November morning, late 2014. And I remember as I walked in from the entrance on 48th and 1st, the first thing that I saw, literally the first thing that I saw as I walked in, was the annual display, November, annual display of Palestinian culture and heritage. And it was a nice and benign-looking display about Palestinian embroidery. I have nothing against embroidery of that people or the other. And I was naive and thought that, well, okay, this is maybe just a display. Then I got a guided tour of the UN, the headquarters, with an official UN guide. I did so because I wanted to learn about the organization that I was serving in on behalf of Israel, and I wanted to learn about the institutions. So we go through the General Assembly, the Economic Chamber. We have a picture taken at the forum where the prime ministers and heads of state speak. And as you come out of the Security Council, the most important forum and room in that building, there is one display of UN peacekeeping. Now, UN peacekeeping has been around since 1948, has sent almost 100 missions. There have been almost 100 missions active around the world since 1948, but the UN peacekeeping display is of one conflict. Guess which one? Israel and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And as immediately as you walk out of the Security Council, there's the UN perspective from 1947 partition plan and onwards, and all the milestones, obviously not the ones that we in this room or a pro-Israeli Zionist would share. And that told me really where that organization stands in terms of its bias and what that organization institutionally is doing. For the following 3 years, I provided strategic analysis for the UN for different areas where the UN does peacekeeping operations. At the time, there were 18 active peacekeeping operations running all over the world, mostly in Africa, Middle East, and in Asia. Today, there are only 11 peacekeeping missions active, and as we probably all know, they haven't been closed or dismantled because there's global peace, sadly. They've been closed because, sadly, they are not delivering, and they are not working. They are not working in the Central African Republic, they are not working and delivering in Congo, they are not working in Mali, and I could go on and on with a list of troubled areas around the world where, unfortunately, UN peacekeeping isn't delivering as people anticipate that it should do. And this brings me closer to Israel. There are 3 peacekeeping forces permanently deployed in our area. One in Lebanon, one on the Golan Heights between Israel and Syria, and one in Jerusalem that has an overarching mandate over the region. UNIFIL costs about $500 million every year. UNDOF on the Golan Heights about 200 million, and UNSO far less than that, around 80-90 million. When I look at the situation before the October 7 attack against Israel, and before Hezbollah decided to attack Israel unprovoked, I am on record saying long before that UNIFIL is failing in its mission, has not implemented its mandate, and in addition to that, has failed to honestly and accurately report on the reality on the ground, on its own failures and shortcomings, and is misleading the Security Council and the world about the situation in Lebanon. Unfortunately, that became all very apparent that that was indeed the situation as Hezbollah started firing, and even more so when finally the IDF was told by the cabinet to take action inside Lebanon, and our brave soldiers uncovered weapons cache after weapons cache hidden in civilian houses, tunnels, bunkers, command and control facilities, all of them built in southern Lebanon, all of them built under the not-so-watchful eyes of UN peacekeepers, and none of it reported in any of UNIFIL's reports. What I think is apparent today is that the situation must change. When Israel started maneuvering in southern Lebanon, attacking Hezbollah infrastructure and fighters, Israel had to be extremely careful, and it had to limit its operations, and it was hampered in terms of its freedom of movement in order not to, by accident, hit UN peacekeepers. And of course, Israel did that, being a very professional military. Israel tries its best not to strike at civilians and not to strike UN peacekeepers, and by and large, Israel succeeded with that. But on the ground, UN peacekeepers not only didn't prevent Hezbollah from violating Security Council Resolution 1701, not only did they not report on the violations that Hezbollah did, but many times they interfered with Israeli operations and they prevented Israeli soldiers from protecting Israeli civilians while Hezbollah was firing at Israel. And this is quite an absurd situation. What I think that we have to do is to reassess and to take stock of the current situation. I think that there are parts of the Israeli establishment that need to reevaluate the credibility and the importance and the operational benefit, the operational and the strategic benefit of UN peacekeeping today around Israel. I think that much more can be done with fewer troops. I think that we do not need 10 or 11 or 12,000 UNIFIL soldiers deployed in southern Lebanon, doing, in my mind, far too little, not implementing their mandate, and not being professional. I think that the good officers that UN peacekeeping forces can provide and should provide could be limited to liaison, tripartite meetings between Lebanon, Israel, and the UN, and otherwise to facilitate diplomacy and to mitigate friction and misunderstandings between the sides. I don't think that there is a need for big UN peacekeeping forces because they are not delivering. Not for the state of Lebanon, definitely not for Israel, and I think that in many times they have also been not helpful and sometimes even downright dangerous. Like with so many other things, problems also begin when there's lack of clarity in Israel. And I've been at many preparatory meetings in Israel when the mandate of UNIFIL was up for renewal and when we had positive engagements with friendly administrations in the US, and where the question came up, does Israel want to downsize UNIFIL? And many times, most times, the question wasn't a clear one from the state of Israel, not from the political echelon and not from the professional echelon. And I think that's a waste. I think we're in a different situation now, and just as I said in the former talk that we had, the discussion, we should reevaluate our policy towards Egypt. I think that we should also reevaluate our policy towards UN peacekeeping, ask them to downsize and right-size, demand of them to implement their mandates, hold them accountable when they don't, and have a small, more effective mechanism on the ground, one that doesn't interfere when Israel needs to defend itself, and one that is obligated to report the truth on the ground. If that happens, I think there is a benefit of having UN peacekeeping. If it doesn't, I fear that it is a relic of the past that we shouldn't have around us and that we shouldn't be limited by. Thank you very much.
The United Nations, as well as the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court, have proven themselves to be among the most bitter anti-Semitic enemies of Israel. To address this complicated battleground, I am proud to present British barrister and one of the most eloquent voices for the Jewish people today, Natasha Hausdorff.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What a privilege to be amongst so many of you, individuals and organizations that are fighting in this battle for truth, justice, and the equal treatment for the Jewish state of Israel. You, so many of you, are at the forefront of the battle against the United Nations and the use of international courts to weaponize international law against the only Jewish state. The United Nations has for many decades been a victim of the battle between the rule of law countries, Israel, the UK, the United States, those countries that view rule of law as a curtailment on government power. A battle between those states and those despots and dictatorships that in contrast view the rule of law and the use of law as a means of wielding power. And as increasingly we see this battle manipulating the law and international law in particular against Western interests, we have to understand that this is not just Israel's fight, but Israel is at the forefront of a fight against Western civilization as a whole. And nowhere do we see that more powerfully, more forcefully, than in the international courts and tribunals, the ICJ and the ICC in particular. It's no accident that when Richard Heidemann interviewed Foreign Minister Gideon Saar, the first few questions were about this battle against Israel in the international arena, this abuse of law, this weaponization of law, and the inversion of key legal terms like occupation, ethnic cleansing, colonialism, apartheid, genocide. Let's just take a moment and understand what is being done to each of these terms. Because remember, what starts with the State of Israel will not end with the State of Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, where was there an occupation? Well, Jordan's occupation of East Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria, where Jews were ethnically cleansed from those territories. Where is the real apartheid? If you travel through Yehuda v'Shomron, or as some call it, the West Bank, there are big red signs that warn Israelis from entering Area A. They don't really mean Israelis, because we see Israeli Arabs going backwards and forwards. No, ladies and gentlemen, those areas are Judenrein. That is the real ethnic cleansing. That is the real apartheid. Colonialism? Look around you. Israel is the decolonization success story. My family lived under Ottoman rule and then British Mandate rule before establishing or re-establishing the Jewish state of Israel in 1948. And then we come to the term genocide. The inversion of this term. I don't just mean with respect to the acts of genocide and the Holocaust that gave rise to the term, that prompted Raphael Lemkin to coin this term, to provide legal terminology for those atrocities that were committed against the Jewish people. And only yesterday and the day before, in the March of the Living, we commemorated those lives that were lost and reaffirmed our commitment to never again. I don't just mean the Holocaust that gave rise to the term genocide, but those acts of genocide on the 7th of October that were again committed against Jews because they were Jews. The inversion of that term and the projection in each and every one of these instances, what was done to the Jewish people themselves are being accused of. And it is the law and international courts that are being weaponized for this purpose. I am truly privileged that over the last decade, I have worked with phenomenal lawyers, led by Jonathan Turner of UK Lawyers for Israel, and in partnership with so many organizations that are present here today, we have been moving the needle against these abuses of international law. We have been standing up, we have been making legal submissions that have been embraced by some legal academics and even by some judges of the International Court of Justice. Former Vice President Julia Sebutinde. Give her a round of applause. Her commitment to the rule of law, to real international law, and her continued calling out of the bias of those judges that were led by the previous president Judge Salem, with his own vicious track record against the state of Israel, the very fact that that judge was not that the international community did not demand that judge recuse himself, tells us everything that we need to know about where these institutions have gone. And that UK Lawyers for Israel have pointed out the abuse of facts at these institutions too. When Karim Khan's application for arrest warrants against the leaders of the only Jewish state were predicated entirely on false information, ladies and gentlemen, we proved that every phrase of every sentence of Karim Khan's application, which he made public, his public summary, every phrase of every sentence was false. That international courts and tribunals seek to rehabilitate themselves and their shocking reputations and failing to live up to the lofty ideals that they were founded with, that they seek to rehabilitate themselves by going after the Jewish state, this must end. And with your help, I believe that we can end it. This, ultimately, is the eighth front. The eighth front in this war that is being waged against Israel. Look at the extraordinary successes that the Jewish people, the IDF, the security forces, have managed to achieve in those 7 fronts. The eighth front, ladies and gentlemen, is winnable too. If we reaffirm our commitment to truth, justice, and real international law, and we don't shy away from expressing the importance of the Jewish tradition in upholding standards of morality, that the IDF leads the way as a light unto the nations. I went on the ground in Gaza in September with an international panel of legal and military experts who were all astounded at the lengths that Israel's army takes to prevent civilian casualties, going way above the requirements of international law. That is the story that JNS proudly tells. That is the story that we need to be supporting, that we should be shouting proudly and as loudly as possible. And with all of your help, I fully believe that the eighth front is just as winnable as Israel has shown the other 7 to be. Thank you so much.
Straight off of a 4-year posting is Israel's ambassador to the United Nations and a longtime minister holding numerous portfolios. Gilad Erdan knows firsthand the challenges of Israeli governance and international diplomacy. Now he's helping to save Jewish lives when it counts most as global president of Magen David Adom. Sitting in conversation with JNS senior contributing editor Ruthie Bloom, I present to you Ambassador Gilad Erdan.
Good evening, everyone. Okay.
Good evening.
I'm trying to balance the perfect English accent of Natasha. Of course, I will fail. Yes.
Now, let me hear. Yes, it's on. Welcome, Gilad Erdan. I'm glad that Alex introduced you because your bio is so long, it would have been hard for me to memorize it. But I would like to say, I think a lot of people here, many people know you as the ambassador at the UN and the United States. And you moved from this hornet's nest at the United Nations, you made this shift to this incredible organization, Magen David Adom, that actually helps people, unlike the UN, that does its best to harm everybody, especially Israel.
Yeah. She deserves a round of applause for what she said.
Thank you. So, but I'd like to know not only how that transition was, how did you make that decision to move from there to there? And also, what do you think should be done about the United Nations? I mean, I know you're out of there, but I'm sure you have some opinions about that.
Yeah. So first, good evening, and thanks for having me. Really great event and great speakers and a great crowd. It's good to be back in Israel. And yes, I'm here not as Israel's UN ambassador. I'm here as the global president of Magen David Adom. But first, since I also heard your question and the other speakers, I would like to share in a nutshell what I have learned about the UN in my 4 years term. And I learned that the UN not just lost its way, it's lost its purpose. I mean, the UN was founded after the Holocaust to fight and defend human rights and prevent atrocities. And when I was appointed, I always asked myself, okay, the UN is failing to prevent wars, but how is it possible that we are the only democracy in the Middle East and still 70% of the UN's condemnations, 70% are against Israel? How is it possible? But then when you learn deeply about the political makeup of the UN and you realize that it started with 51 member states that plus minus shared similar values, but today it's comprised of 193 countries, and most of the world is not aware of the fact that majority of countries at the United Nations are non-democracies, and almost 1/3 of them are Muslim countries. So the outcome, obviously, is a moral distortion. The outcome can lead to a situation whereas Lebanon is being selected to lead the International Court of Justice, while Lebanon is at war with Israel. Eritrea and Somalia are right now on the Human Rights Council. Crazy outcome. And Iran, of course, was elected to lead a social forum in the Human Rights Council. So I think that the conclusion today is that Israel must lead a global campaign to defund the UN completely, to dismantle the UN completely. And many people, when they hear me saying it, they think, oh, nonsense, it's not possible. It is. 80 years ago, the world had the League of Nations. It collapsed because it was a failure. And the same can happen today. We can convince President Trump. He already pulled out of the Human Rights Council. He already defunded UNRWA. He already pulled out from the World Health Organization. It is possible. And the United States is still the biggest funder of the UN. $19 billion every year out of $74 billion, the annual budget of the UN. We are paying our enemies to destroy us, the democratic world. It cannot continue. So this is my main lesson. Thank you.
Well, and if I weren't sitting here, I'd also be applauding, but I can't move the microphone. I just would like to add, though, I mean, you're absolutely right about the makeup of the UN, but let's get real. We know that there are plenty of Western countries who happily joined in condemning Israel at the UN or abstaining from condemnation. So let's not just say it's because of the third world or the Muslim countries.
I agree with you, but it's also because they surrendered, they cave into the interest, and that's again, we're going back into the distorted political makeup of the current UN. Why we should give authorities when it comes to wars or human rights to the biggest human rights abusers? It doesn't make sense. But again, I don't want to, you have here Ambassador Danon, you heard a lot about the UN. I came here today because I'm so proud to be the global president of Magen David Adom, and it's important for me to share with you that, you know, after 4 years as fighting evil inside at the UN, I felt that I want to do like the polar opposite. I want to lead an organization that does pure good. And what can be more good than saving lives every day, every minute? And when you see, and when you see how a shift in Magen David Adom starts, you see the true nature of the Israeli society, not like as they describe us with all these falsehoods, apartheid state, etc. You see, it's like a beginning of a joke. You see an Orthodox rabbi with a Muslim Arab, with a secular Jew coming together on an ambulance to save lives, to save everyone's lives. So when I finished my term at the UN, I felt that this is what I want to do. And since October 7th, I even felt it more, because at the UN, you know how many times they try to blame us that we are attacking hospitals and we are targeting Palestinian ambulances. Well, I saw the opposite. I saw, everyone, I hope, heard the story of the late Amit Man, you know, our paramedic who fought and saved lives in Kibbutz Be'eri until her last moment, until she was murdered by the Hamas Nazis. And when I learned about the bravery of the MDA, Magen David Adom teams and paramedics and volunteers, we have 32,000 volunteers from every walk of life in Israel. Yeah, every walk of life. So for me, it was an honor and a privilege to accept this role of global president.
Well, that's great. Also, I'm curious to know how, if you noticed the way in which Magen David Adom had to step up. You know, October 7th put us all in shock. It wasn't only the terrible massacre, but there are so many wounded people, so many people needed evacuation. The ambulances had to get ready. It was total chaos on October 7th, and by October 8th, everybody had to be prepared and evacuate people to the hospital. Did you see on October 7th, you were still in America, and but since then, you've seen it develop. It must have had to move really quickly into a whole new phase.
Yeah, there was a shock, like everywhere else in Israel. I followed closely all the first responders in Israel because before I was appointed as UN ambassador, I was Israel's Minister of Public Security for 5 years. And one of the lessons as Minister of Public Security was that there's a new strategy of our enemies, and we have to pay attention. Yeah, we talk a lot about the importance of the IDF. It's obvious. And the IDF is the most important security organization in Israel. But our enemies also, they know that they cannot defeat our military on the conventional battlefield. So what do? What is their strategy for, I think, the last 2 or 3 decades? It's not a coincidence that they arm themselves with missile and rockets and they fire them indiscriminately and they dig terror tunnels. They want to target our home front because they want to terrorize our citizens. They know that they cannot defeat the IDF. So they target the home front, the communities, and they hope that by exploiting and weaponizing the UN and tying our hands from exercising our right to defend ourselves and targeting those communities, they can terrorize us and drive us away from our homeland in fear. Therefore, the most important conclusion is that we today need to strengthen the home front. We need to pay attention to the first responders. And who is more important? I mean, the IDF is safeguarding the borders of Israel, but Magen David Adom safeguards the lives within those borders. So this was my lesson as Minister of Public Security, when I combined it to the conclusions that I learned at the UN, it was for me like a clear decision to join Magen David Adom and to continue my battle to strengthen Israel, but in a different way. I used to speak and fight on the global stage, and now I'm trying to strengthen the paramedics who we call the warriors in white, and people should be aware of it. Dozens of Magen David Adom's paramedic and volunteers paid the ultimate price since October 7th, because even though they were targeted deliberately, and the Shin Bet shared it with us, today I don't know if I can say the word Shin Bet, but the Shin Bet shared it with us, that they have found on the Nukhba bodies orders to deliberately target Magen David Adom stations and paramedics, because, as I said, they want to terrorize the people who live there. They want them to feel that help is not on the way because they can't get there, our ambulances and paramedics. Therefore, it's so important for the resilience. That's why I call Magen David Adom the backbone of of our national resilience, and that's what Magen David Adom is today.
And didn't that frighten volunteers away from service in that? I mean, being targeted by Nukhba terrorists and also having to witness and see and take care, triage people in the kind of condition that we know from Zaka volunteers who are so traumatized that they have PTSD, etc. And you don't see that causing
yeah,
people...
of course, the images were horrifying, and many people were traumatized. But it's a sacred mission, and this is the spirit of Magen David Adom. Everyone in Magen David Adom, that's what they do every day. They dedicate their life to saving other people's life, and that was, our test. That was the most important day, or since then many days. And we're very proud, that many things, with the help of our supporters in the United States and in other countries, because thank God Magen David Adom has many supporters that are helping to strengthen it and support it for many, many years, even more than 80 years, even before Israel was established. So today Magen David Adom has the most advanced blood bank on earth. I invite all of you to visit it, and I mean it. I mean, it's underground, fortified. It can function under barrage of rockets, and it helped us even to provide, blood transfusions to the soldiers on the front lines, and people should know it. This war, we succeeded to reduce, to cut the mortality rate among wounded soldiers in 50% because our ability to send blood units to the front lines. And thank God we have one of the most advanced dispatch centers that any, I think, emergency organization has, equipped with AI technology that helped us, of course, to respond to thousands of phone calls at the same time and also prioritize them. We have today helicopters. We are deployed all across Israel, be it Judea and Samaria, of course. Right now we are equipping all the regional councils in Judea and Samaria with armored ambulances because we learned that they are being targeted deliberately by the terrorists, that's right. And that's one of our first priorities. So thank God, as I said, today Magen David Adom is one of the most advanced and technological rescue organization on earth, but we should make sure that it would be the number one, like the IDF.
Absolutely.
And it will be, God willing.
Now, just one quick last question before we wrap it up, and that's a personal one. Do you feel less stressed? No, not that kind of personal one.
Okay. No, because Bibi is going to be here.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't ask me personally. We have no aspirations.
That's right. That's right. No, this one is
just want to do our job.
This is just about levels of anxiety. You go from that place at the UN. I can imagine what it's like waking up every morning and having to go there. And now you're doing, as you said, this kind of God's work. Do you feel differently when you get up in the morning?
Look, I was never in a position to talk against the political arena and say that, the professionals are much better. I think every person, if he does his job with a pure commitment to the future of Israel and the Jewish people, he can do many good things, be it in the Knesset, be it in the government, be it in Magen David Adom, or in leading a federation in one of the states of United States. So today, yes, I feel that I'm doing something different. It's less ugly sometimes because you can focus only on doing good and saving lives, but I still have my aspirations to continue and maybe one day influence in other ways.
So thank you so much, Ambassador Gilad.
My honor, my honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ruthie, and thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Continuing at the United Nations, now serving in his second term as Israel's permanent representative to the United Nations, our dear friend, Ambassador Danny Danon, has been fighting tooth and nail against members of the world's most anti-Semitic body. Despite his hard stance, he was the first Israeli chosen to head a permanent committee at the United Nations as chairman of the UN Legal Committee. This week, he has led a delegation of over 30 UN ambassadors, first on the March of the Living in Auschwitz, and now to Israel to celebrate Israeli Independence Day. Sitting in conversation with JNS Features editor Steve Lindy, I present to you, please welcome Ambassador Danny Danon.
Good evening, Ambassador Danon.
Good evening. Happy to be here.
And we'll pick up where Richard Heidemann left off. How was it to take all those ambassadors to the International March of the Living this time?
Well, it was very emotional. I'm leading a delegation of dozens of UN ambassadors. We started the trip in Poland. We marched from Auschwitz I to Birkenau, and they told me it changed their lives. You know, Elie Wiesel of blessed memory once said, you know, once you enter Auschwitz, you enter a different man. And I think that's what happened to them. First, I want to congratulate you for your birthday. 65 years old. And I want to congratulate JNS for this amazing conference. You know, I just concluded a meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and the delegation, and he's preparing to come also to address this crowd, and I think he put up an amazing conference. Yishar koach.
Thank you. Do you think it really has an impact taking these ambassadors to Poland?
Absolutely. You know, when you deal with diplomacy, it's not boxing. It's not like a knockout that you win the fight in a minute. It's a marathon. You have to wake up every morning, engage, and educate. So I'll give you an example. Today we started the day, we went south to Kfar Aza, to the Nova Festival, you know, so the atrocities. And once people are educated, when we'll go back to the UN, we will see the impact. It doesn't mean that they will all vote for us tomorrow morning. It's not going to happen. But slowly, you build alliances, you build friendships, and I'm optimistic about it.
What do you think, Mr. Ambassador, can be done against all these anti-Israeli moves at the United Nations?
Well, now we have President Trump, and we are very optimistic. I think the first thing that should be done is to apply personal sanctions against some of the bad actors in the international arena. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you heard about Francesca Albanese. Yeah, you can boo her. You can. And I think the U.S. and many here in the crowd are from the U.S. The U.S. should apply sanctions against her. She shouldn't be allowed entering the United States of America. She comes once a month to promote hate, to go to the universities. And, you know, she compared our Prime Minister, Netanyahu, to Hitler. And she compared your president to horrible leaders. That's unacceptable. And I expect the new administration to be stronger on this issue.
Do you think things are changing under the Trump administration? We still don't have a U.S. ambassador to the United Nations.
Well, you know me, Steve, for many years. You know, when I was in the Knesset, we worked together. I'm very honest. I was very disappointed that Ambassador designate Elie Stefanik is not coming. Let's be honest about it. She's great. And, but I'm sure that President Trump will elect a strong ambassador that will help me. We need that help. We need to stand together against those hostile forces, anti-Semites. You know, so far we're hearing good voices coming from the administration. I think Secretary Rubio is doing a great job also, and I'm optimistic about that.
I was checking that 70 years ago in a cabinet meeting, Ben-Gurion famously said, shmum. Why? And they were actually talking about Gaza. Why do we care about the United Nations?
So I think we should make the distinction. When Ben-Gurion said shmum, I think the meaning is that we should do what's good for Israel, period. That's it. Ignore everyone else. When I speak with my colleagues in the government, and I speak with them a lot, I tell them, you do what you have to do. I will handle the Security Council. I will handle the General Assembly. Take the right decisions in order to win this war, finish the job, bring back the hostages, and eliminate Hamas. And I think that's the meaning of shmum, that you take the right decisions and you don't care about what the UN will say after that. Regarding whether we should stay at the UN or not, I think we have to think about it very carefully, because you have other bad actors, without naming names, because I'm a diplomat now, that will be very happy if the US will pull out completely from the UN. So I think the US should look at what they want to do, what they are doing with the funds over there, but demand some reforms. And you know that we have many issues with the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres. By the way, 18 months after October 7th, Secretary General Guterres hasn't visited Israel yet. Can you believe it? The UN was established 80 years ago after World War II and the horrors of the Holocaust. And look what happened here. In one day, 1,300 people were murdered, and he ignored it. But in a year's time, we will have elections, and I think and I hope that the US will be more than involved in electing a new Secretary General for the UN.
Ambassador, you're actually the only ambassador who was in the position and was called back to do the position again. First ambassador in Israeli history to do that. As we were walking in, someone said to you, you have the worst job in the world. What's it like?
Well, I have to be honest that I never planned coming back. And excuse me, all my friends from New York, it's not that, the great Jewish community in New York. But, 5 long years at the UN, we finished it. We went back to Israel. I got re-elected to the Knesset. And I said, that's it. I will come to visit my friends in New York, but I will never step into the United Nations. But October 7th changed all of our lives. And when Prime Minister called me and told me that he wants me to go back, because now is a time when my experience can be, in essence, I couldn't say no. I told him yes, but. The but was I have to speak with my wife, to relocate the family back to New York. But I think it was the right decision, because, experience means a lot. So today, when we handle all those hypocrites and the people who incite against us in the Security Council, in the General Assembly, I know how to handle them. And I think today we have support. And the fact that I'm here with 30 UN ambassadors that landed in Israel during a wartime, I think it speaks a lot. We are not alone. Sometimes we think that everyone is against us. It's not the case. We have allies. We have friends. They should be more vocal. They should speak up more, but we are not alone.
How do you explain to these ambassadors, to the world, and to our audience here at JNS, where we're at this war?
So today, when we woke up very early and we drove to the border with Gaza, we gave them a briefing with the IDF commanders, and we told them we haven't finished the job. Let's be honest about it. The fact that we still have hostages in Gaza, and when my colleagues at the UN asked me, Danny, we know when the war will end. We have to move on. We have to put a closure to this event. I told them it will not happen. We will not leave behind 59 hostages and move on. The war will not end with hostages in Gaza, period. And after that, we will make sure that Hamas is not capable of continuing taking advantage of the people in Gaza. So I think we achieved a lot, but we haven't finished the job. And I'm sure the Prime Minister will be here and will tell you. And I saw him, an hour ago. I saw that he's very determined about completing the mission.
How do you feel about the talks going on between the U.S. and Iran?
Well, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical because we know the Iranians, they lie all the time. They are master of deception. And I think if there will be a diplomatic agreement that they will decide to abandon their nuclear ambitions and they will decide not to continue with developing their ballistic missiles, we will be very happy. But frankly speaking, I'm very skeptical about them doing it. Only a few months ago, Iran sent dozens of ballistic missiles into Israel. So they crossed the line already. So I think we have the capabilities and we have strong leaders today. And I hope that the US and other democracies will understand that we should take that threat very serious. When a leader is threatening to exterminate the Jewish people, we better believe them 80 years after Auschwitz was liberated.
We have about 2 minutes left. Are you confident that we can expand the Abraham Accords to include other countries in the Middle East?
Absolutely. And look what happened in the last year. I'm very happy that United and Delta resumed their flights. But the only airline that flew 24/7 was Fly Dubai. And we should give them credit. And we have a strong bond with the UAE and Bahrain. And I used to meet my colleagues at the UN from the UAE, and we had to find secret locations to meet in the city. And today, look how many Israelis visit the UAE, and the strong bond we have despite the war. I'm very optimistic about it. I read, I cannot acknowledge it, that Syria wants to join the Abraham Accord. I'm sure we'll see something happening with the Saudis and other countries. And I'm sure President Trump, when I met him before the elections, he spoke only about Abraham Accords. That was his legacy. And I'm sure we will hear more from him about this issue.
Thank you. Ambassador Danon, I'd like to thank you on behalf of our audience and the people of Israel for all the good work that you do.
I wanna thank you, Steve. For me, I'm used to be in a big hall, to be the only one supporting Israel. And here I am with 1,000 people, 1,000 ambassadors. I invite you all to have the next JNS conference in the hall of the United Nations. Thank you very much. Toda rabah.
Hungary is standing at the forefront in the fight for restoring nationalist characteristics and against accepting illegal Muslim immigration, in strong opposition to a European Union that has harmed the continent and seeks to wipe out nationalism. He's here. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a policy in the United States that when a United States senator walks into the room, we stop, everybody pauses, we thank the speaker we're about to interrupt, and we proceed. But tonight we have an even greater privilege. It is indeed my personal honor to introduce to each of you the leader of Israel who has demonstrated his vision, his determination, his belief in Israel as the leader of the free world in this part of the country and indeed around the world. Prime Minister Netanyahu, yes, has served as Israel's longest-serving prime minister. But to him, it's more than just a position. It is a life commitment, a lifetime of commitment to see to it that against all obstacles, against all foes, and in hand with all friends, that Israel thrives, that each Israeli thrives, and that the future of the Jewish people in the hands of Israel at the center of all of the Jewish people is a strong future, is a future that is built upon respect, dignity, and belief in the justice and the dignity of every human being. Please welcome the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu.
There's so many friends here that I don't see, some that I do, and beginning first with you, Richard. You've been a wonderful friend over the years. You and your wife, to me and my wife, you've been, as we say in Swedish, mishpoche. I want to also acknowledge other friends that are here. Pastor Hagee. Pastor Hagee? Ambassador Danon, our UN ambassador who brought ambassadors, and I know there are other ambassadors from the UN and from Israel. Welcome. Equally, I see many friends in the crowd. Malcolm, I see you. And I see old friends. I asked you a question, my dear friend from Minnesota. How come there's so many liberals in Minnesota? I never got an answer. And of course, I see here also, well, I don't see him, but my good friend Mark Levin. Where is Mark? Where is Mark? Where is Mark? Ah. Now here's a man who speaks the truth fearlessly, in a straightforward and sort of subtle way. And he is an example of what all of you are, but especially what JNS does, and I want to acknowledge Alex Tremaine, CEO, for the work that you do, to he said to counter the conceptia. I said, no, it's not countering the conceptia, it's just to speak the truth. That's what we need. Because there's a reason. Because you cannot build peace and security on lies. If you do so, sooner or later, these lies will crash on the realities of the Middle Eastern realities. You cannot do that. They crash. All these theories that are promoted over the years that are contrary to reality, they don't stand over time. They fall like pieces of an iceberg into the ocean. And very soon nothing is left. So you need a solid foundation. And the only solid foundation is the truth. So I want to encapsulate some truths for you tonight because I think they explain where we are today. In the founding of the State of Israel, 77 years ago, we faced a fairly united Arab world. It was led by Gamal Abdel Nasser. He promoted the idea of pan-Arabism. He would unite the whole Arab realm under his leadership, under his rule. The source of unity, one of the sources of unity, was to drive Israel, that is to oppose the founding of the State of Israel. That was done by the Egyptian regime before him, to prevent the Jewish state from being established. But once established, it had to be removed. It had no place. Right in the center of that great Arab domain, there couldn't be a Western state. We were foreign interlopers. We were foreign interlopers, right? I mean, we're here in Jerusalem, about a kilometer away from David's capital, which was established 3,000 years ago. We are not foreign interlopers. We're not the Belgians in the Congo. We're not the Dutch in Indonesia. We're the Jews in the Jewish homeland, Judea. All right? That's one truth, an important truth. But equally, they tried to not only, at first they didn't try to actually annihilate our history, they just tried to annihilate us. And it wasn't such a big task. We were very small, really on a strip, tiny strip on the edge of the Mediterranean with Jerusalem. We had Hebron, a few thousand years, and very little else. And the idea was you can cut to the sea and finish it off. So they didn't waste time on propaganda. They just organized themselves, having, from our point of view, miraculously defeated them in the War of Independence. They didn't think it was over, and they arranged themselves to choke us and drive us into the sea in the weeks and days before 1967. And of course, you know how that ended. It ended even though they all said, well, Nasser put his troops into the Sinai, put 100,000 troops in the Sinai. Syria would join him. Hussein, despite our warnings, joined him from right across the street here. And we were about to be finished. But in 6 days, we turned the tables on them. And of course, we came back to our ancestral homeland in full force. And by the way, we took the high ground, and we will not leave it. It's ours. So they still didn't give up. They tried the war of attrition, and then in 1973, a combined attack, this time by 2 Arab armies in the Yom Kippur War. They surprised us. Within 3 weeks, we were at the gates of Damascus and Cairo, and that ended that. And so that began this whole situation where they attacked us again and again, created a situation where the Arab world began to realize that Israel is here to stay and that they have to make their dues with it. And so we began a process that began first with the peace at Camp David between Begin and Sadat, and later the peace with Jordan that was signed by Yitzhak Rabin and King Hussein. And so what you had is that the Arab world was slowly coming to realize that Israel is a fact that cannot be removed, and they were beginning to make peace with us. We couldn't progress on that peace because one part of the Arab world resolutely remained against us, and that's, who's that? Class? The Palestinians. The Palestinians clung to the original opposition to Israel, that basically you do not recognize a Jewish state, the Jewish state, in any boundary, in any form. Israel has to be annihilated. Israel has to be excised like a tumor. That was their position, and that was and remains the principal obstacle to a Palestinian-Israeli peace, the persistent Palestinian opposition to a Jewish state in any form, in any boundary. That's a truth that somehow eludes fairly intelligent people. They sit in the State Department, they sit in the foreign chancelleries of the world. That's a very difficult concept to absorb. How? I think it's so obvious. They keep saying it. They keep doing it. They keep saying, we want a Palestinian state in our ancestral homeland in order to destroy the Jewish state. They say it. They say it in Ramallah. They say it in Gaza. They teach it in Ramallah to their children. They teach it in Gaza. There's no difference in the textbooks, exactly the same. One pays for slay in Ramallah. The other one says, and operates the ICC and conducts warfare against us, lawfare, and all this by heart. And the other says, no, we have to go straight out, militarily and terror. That's the difference between Hamas and the PA. The Hamas says, you'll destroy Israel by terror and military conquest right away. And the PA says, no, you destroy it politically by driving it through propaganda and lawfare to the 67 boundaries, and then you can do the military thrust because you're a few kilometers from the sea. That's the difference between them. But the persistent refusal of the Palestinian Arabs to recognize a Jewish state in any boundary is the source of this conflict for close to 100 years, actually 100 years and more, from the Mufti in the 20s to today in the 20s, a century later. No difference. One before the establishment of the state, and it didn't change after the establishment of the state. So the idea that you'll create a Palestinian state and that will produce peace, I'm saying this for the ambassadors who are here, all of you know this. The idea is folly, nothing more than folly. We just tried a Palestinian state in Gaza. You saw what that brought, right? So we are absolutely clear on that, but it's important to see what happened in the rest of the Arab world. When, after we had these two peace treaties, historic peace treaties with Egypt and with Jordan, these are cold peace treaties because there wasn't really pacification of the population, but between governments. And that still holds, and that's good, because a cold peace is a lot better than a hot war. Okay, that held. It took us another quarter of a century to get the next peace treaty because everybody said the only way you're going to get it is you have to go through the Palestinians. That is, first solve the Palestinian problem, and then you'll get peace with the rest of the Arab world. Remember that? Yeah. Who said John Kerry? 12 points. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's right. He said, it's not going to happen. No, 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 no. He said it 4 times in the Saban Forum. I wish he said 5. We might get 5 countries. But that's what he said. And that was the regnant assumption. And of course, I didn't think so, because if we had to go through the Palestinians, aside from creating a state that will spell the end of Israel, we knew that the Palestinians would not make peace because they don't want a state next to Israel. They want a state instead of Israel. And so they'll never accept the expansion of peace with other countries because we wouldn't succumb to their diktats. And so I decided to do something different. I decided to go around the Palestinians, and we went directly to the Arab capitals, made 4 peace treaties with 4 Arab states in about 2 months. And so we expanded the circle of peace, but the main thing that you can see here is that the number of Arab states that attacked us, 5, arguably 7 states in 1948, 3 in 1967, 2 in the Yom Kippur War, then 1 in the Lebanon War in 1982, kept declining. And basically the Arab world began to normalize its relations with Israel. And that's the good news. The bad news is that the Arab world was being replaced by another much more potent force that appeared on the horizon, and that force is Iran. Beginning with the Islamic Revolution in Iran in 1979, Iran began to be the potent Islamist force in the Middle East, and basically to replace the Arab world as the engine of attacks against Israel. They were committed to destroy Israel for a simple reason. They're committed, first of all, to conquering the Middle East. And they identified Israel correctly as the only real force that stands in their way locally in the region, because no one else is fighting Iran. The only ones who are willing to fight Iran and are fighting Iran is us. The only ones who are keeping the Middle East in place, as opposed to collapsing before Iranian aggression, is us. If we're not here, the neighboring countries would collapse on the spot. I won't give you details, but there are a lot of details that I could give you. But the ones who don't need the details are the Iranians. They know that very well. So they proceeded to embark on a campaign right from the start that basically targeted Israel And it's not only to conquer the Middle East, it's for their larger ambition to subjugate all Muslims to their fanatic creed, but also, and that's written in their constitution, but also to export the revolution worldwide. And so their chant, right from the start, was what? Death to Israel, death to America. Death to Israel, death to America. That's almost a geographic truth. We stand in their way for their larger purposes. So they had to get rid of us. And in order to get rid of us, they designed basically two forms of attack. The first attack was to try to develop over the last 2 decades nuclear weapons. We'll talk about that in a minute. The second line of attack is something they developed piece by piece, step by step, which was to choke Israel by conquering pieces of the Middle East, both for their own reasons, but also as a noose of death around us. And you could see them moving from Iran to Iraq, to Syria, to the Mediterranean and Lebanon. They control Lebanon completely. They control Syria in many ways. They control Iraq. So now they have a continuum right to the sea. And then in the south, in Gaza, Hamas and Islamic Jihad. And then further south, the Houthis. And they have other plans. They would like to conquer the Arabian Peninsula. They would like to topple Jordan. They want to complete the conquest of the Middle East. But what stands in their way? Israel. So if you have this noose of death, tighten the noose. And the plan that they hatched is something that became much clearer to us in the course of the war we've just fought. You know that we were attacked savagely, horribly, in October 7th. I mean, these people are indescribable, actually describable. I mean, Chancellor Scholz, who visited me in the beginning of the war, when he saw the film, the horrors, and visited the sites, he said they're exactly like the Nazis. And I said, no, they're different. Not in intent, not in savagery. But the Nazis tried to hide their crimes, and these people carry GoPro cameras, live. You know, they're ecstatic about the blood they shed, the people they butcher, the women they rape, the men they beheaded, the babies they burned. They're ecstatic about it. So they took 250 and some hostages, of which we recovered so far 197, and 198. And of these, 147 are alive, and the remainder are dead. But we intend to recover the rest. There are up to 24 that are alive. The remainder are dead. We intend to bring back all of them. But the most important thing that we had to do was to stop the invasion, which we did. And as we stopped the invasion and continued to take the fight into their territory, and of course into Lebanon, which Hezbollah joined the day after, we learned basically one simple truth. We learned that Sinwar jumped the gun. He jumped the gun. He deviated from the plan that the noose of death had planned in advance, and that plan was that there will be simultaneous invasions from Gaza and from Lebanon. The distances to the center of the country are very small, and simultaneous pelleting of Israel, barrages of ballistic missiles and rockets in a tiny country that was meant to basically erase Israel. That was the plan. And Hamas didn't wait, couldn't get over themselves. They fired too quickly. In fact, Hezbollah was surprised. They said, why did they tell us? They were supposed to tell us. But they didn't tell them. And so we had time to prevent a similar ground invasion that would have been much more potent, because there's no comparison to the power of Hezbollah, the Ridwan force, compared to the Nukhbas, the monsters who attacked us. Much more potent. But by that time, we could move our army to the north, so we stopped that invasion. And we discovered that this was hatched out. There was a clock in Iran, and it said here, the end of Israel in such and such date, and the clock is winding down. But this was the plan. And in many ways, what happened is that we simply broke this. On the second day of the war, I said, we will change the face of the Middle East. We first had to go into Gaza. Our American friends who came here, and I appreciate the fact that President Biden came here at the beginning of the war and gave us support at the beginning of the war. But they said, don't go in. Don't do the ground invasion. Do it from the air. And I said, Joe, we tried that. I myself, as the head of the government, authorized 3 attacks, 3 major operations against Hamas terrorists after they attacked us. We killed thousands of terrorists. We killed their military commander, Jabri. It didn't make a dent. It made a dent. It stayed them. They had to rearm again and so on. But it didn't stop it. I said, it's not going to work. We have to go in. So against their better advice, we went in. And then they said, well, very soon the propaganda war began to work against us. So as we were making our military thrust, the diplomatic support that we had at the start of the war turned against us. And now we were facing pressure to mitigate the fight and very soon to stop the fight. We went into Gaza City. They didn't like it. We went into Shifa Hospital, some hospital, right? They didn't like it. We went into Khan Yunis, and then we reached the outskirts of Rafah. And there the Americans said, don't go in. Don't go in. And if you go in, we'll put an arms embargo on you. And I said to President Biden, look, I respect you. You're the President of the United States. Please respect me. I'm the Prime Minister of the one and only Jewish state. We are going in. And the Secretary of State Blinken came in a few days later, and he said, the President is serious. I said, I know he's serious. He's going to do it. I know. He's already done it. And he said, so what do you say? I said, Tony, we will fight with our fingernails if we have to. And we did. But we had more than fingernails. I said in the cabinet that the weapons will take care of themselves. We'll fight with what we have. But we will not survive if Israel becomes a vassal state. We are not a vassal state. We're the independent state of the Jewish people, and we will do what we need to do to protect us. So we went into Rafah. The Americans told us that we can't go into Rafah because there'll be thousands of casualties. Some said 20,000 casualties. And anyway, they don't have a place to go. Remember that one? Right. Well, I said they do have a place to go. They can go 2 kilometers westward to the beach. There's a safe zone there. And they did. Within 6 days, 1.4 billion people who were congregated in Gaza moved to the beach because we kept moving them out of harm's way. And I visited the extraordinary brigade commander there in the Rafah crossing, saw our soldiers, and I asked him, so Itzik, how many terrorists have you killed? And this was in the middle of the fighting. He said, at this point, 1,203. I said, how do you know? I said, body counts. We see them. They're, we count them, fighters. And I said, how many civilians have you killed? You know what he said? None. None. Because they all left. They ended up killing 2,000 terrorists and practically no civilians. In fact, the only civilian deaths that are recorded are in the beginning of the fighting, as far as I know, because we dropped a stray bomb before we actually went in, and it hit an ammunition dump that Hamas had placed among civilians, and 20 terrorists died and 20 civilians died. But in the course of the fighting, the assumptions that were broadcast around the world, untrue, that we would create extraordinary civilian deaths or that they had no place to go, they were proved to be wrong. And now we got the Philadelphia route, and so we surround Gaza. We hold the perimeter inside Gaza, in the Philadelphia corridor. The sea is on the other side, so they can't smuggle weapons now. They can't do anything about that. Having done that, having destroyed most of the battalions, organized battalions of Hamas, they still have remnants. They still fight there, and we still have a job to do. And the only reason we're not doing it in such a short time is because of the hostages. Otherwise, it would be over long ago. But in the course of doing that, what is a battalion? A battalion means there's a Hamas chief, and he says attack, and 100 people come out of the tunnels and attack. And when you destroy a battalion, 3 people come out, 2 people come out. Unfortunately, a sharpshooter can come out, but there's no organized military structure. So having done that, having removed the threat of invasion from Gaza, or the threat of serious rocketing from Gaza, having also done away with Sinwar, remember him? Remember Def? Remember Ania? Having gotten rid of them, we turn north. And having turned north, we had this small thing, you know, the beepers. You remember the beepers, the pagers? Yeah. So we had a little debate, you know, should we use the beepers? And some of the people said, we have to tell the Americans. I said, no. And we didn't, because, I mean, I don't read the New York Times that often, but why give them the advance? I mean, it would be on the net, it would be, you know, that doesn't make any sense. And after the beepers, we had to bring up the beepers a bit, because we decided that we'd go into Lebanon in October. Why October? Well, obviously, because it's 1 month ahead of November. You'll figure that out. Okay. But in late, in the 3rd week, I think, of September, we learned that Hamas, or rather that Hezbollah had sent 3 beepers to be scanned in Iran. We had previously bombed a scanner they were going to bring in, so we got rid of that, and the guy who operates it. But now they had these, and you know, they have this minuscule amount of TNT, and when the Mossad guy showed it to me a few months earlier, he's giving me an update how many we've got inside, and I say, well, is that really going to do the job? I mean, how much TNT do you have there? And so he says, I don't know, nanograms, something like that. I said, what is that going to do? It's not going to do anything. He said, oh, no, it'll do it. Give me that. I take the beeper, and I throw it on the wood paneling in my office, and it dented it. And I said, okay, go ahead. So now we're all set to go. But now it turns out that they're scanning this. And I learned it, and I was crazy. I said, what? Why didn't you tell me this? Well, it happened a few days ago. Well, how long does it take him to do this? It could take a day. I said, well, we have to do it right away. So we did it, and that meant that we brought up the shock and awe, the beginning of the great campaign in Lebanon. We brought it up about 3 weeks while the army was supposed to prepare in those 3 weeks the war, right? And they didn't have time. So now we said, okay, having done that, why don't you prepare a war? And they did. And they came back a few days later, and they gave me 3 options. One is do nothing, wait, see what the beepers do. The second, because we always wanted to take the Hezbollah out of the battle, I didn't think it was a good idea to just leave them intact, but that was option 1, which they didn't really mean. Option 2 was conquer Bulgaria, something like that, you know, an impossible task. That's the way they do these things. And option 3 was sort of a mixture of command posts here, command posts there. And I said, well, let's have option 4. And option 4 was targeted at the missile and ballistic missile storage main stock that Nasrallah had built over the years in private homes because he was relying on the fact that we would not attack private homes. And he was right, we didn't over the years. But we set a goal for the Army, attack these homes, but get the population out. And they came back 48 hours later with a brilliant plan, brilliant plan. They commandeered Lebanese television and radio. Can you imagine? This is the idea of telling you, if you're a resident of, leave. Because they had a missile in every garage and a rocket in every kitchen. And they would open the roof, and boom, out it comes, and so on. And that was done. So in 6-7 hours, we destroyed the bulk, not all, but the bulk of the main weapons directed against us that Nasrallah had built over 30 years. Now, in the course of those weeks, we had targeted and killed many of the Hezbollah's commanders, military commanders. But there was still one person there, and he was running the war independently. He was doing it quite well, I have to say. And that was Nasrallah himself. So we knew where he was. And the question was, do we hit him or not? And that wasn't a simple answer, because he was the number 2 in the Iranian Axis. He was the second most admired Shiite leader in the Shiite world. He was the beloved son of Khamenei. He treated him like his son. And what does that mean? Could it possibly drive a war? Could it possibly, could it bring Hezbollah into the war? That's a legitimate question. So when we discussed, and I had received some information, I had received a big thicket of intelligence report, and I read it, and it was about Nasrallah, and I read it again, 80 pages. I read it first, I read it again, and I said he has to go. I was particularly impressed. Well, he didn't go just yet. Wait. I was particularly impressed by the fact that not only was he a capable leader, but also that his relationship with Iran was somewhat different from what I thought. I would say he manipulated Iran much more than Iran manipulated him. He influenced Iran much more than Iran influenced him. And when I read this report, I came to the clear conclusion that he was the axis of the axis. And if we remove him, the axis would break. And so we went into a debate in the cabinet. Do we take him out or not? And there were 2 things that were brought up. One, we have to tell the Americans. That again? I said, no, we're not going to do that. And the second was, well, you have to really think seriously about the consequences. I mean, Iran has a lot of ballistic missiles. A ballistic missile, something from where I'm standing right up to that wall. It's like a bus full of tons of TNT. And you have many hundreds of these, and they would fall in Israel, and they would do serious damage. So you couldn't quite dismiss that. And then the question was, do you do it or you don't do it? Well, I stopped. The cabinet meeting went on for quite some time. Cabinet was split, not half and half. Most wanted to do it, but some didn't. And the senior echelon was hesitant. I could see that. So I called the then Minister of Defense and then Chief of Staff to a separate room, and I said, look, the American thing is out of the question. At best, we could tell them, when the planes are en route, give them the courtesy, but we're not going to tell them. But I want to think about what you're saying, and I'll come back to you. And there was a real sigh of relief there, because, I'm going to the States to give a speech at the UN. I was a few hours away from giving a speech. So I'll stay in the UN. By that time, we had intel that Nasrallah would probably leave to another place, which we didn't have access. So that would solve that dilemma. What I think they didn't know is that I have what is called an Air Force One. It's really Air Force -1. It's kind of dilapidated, but it's very serviceable because it has a bed and it has a secure line. So I slept for a couple of hours, 2 hours, got up, opened the phone, and called the chiefs in, and I said, okay, I've made a decision, we're going to take him out. And I asked that you convene the cabinet on a phone line when I get to New York. Got to New York, went to the Regency Hotel. I mean, I'm sure there have been many important conversations in the Regency Hotel, but I don't think there was anything like this. And we had a cabinet meeting in the Regency Hotel and decided on the attack. I still had to write my speech, which I do. What a bore. So I spent the night writing the speech, but also taking 2 other phones to make sure that the planes take off, that the logistics were okay. And went to give the speech. And right after the speech, I was meeting some Israeli journalists. I don't do that very often. There's no point. And my military secretary came in and gave me a note with one word, Butsa, done, done. Now, the collapse, the removal of Nasrallah really broke the axis. It was a terrific blow. Some people are irreplaceable. And so far, he's been irreplaceable. And so, having delivered that blow to Hezbollah, we also delivered a blow to Assad, because Assad was relying heavily on Nasrallah. He wasn't relying on his army. During the civil war, every time he got into real trouble, Nasrallah would send thousands and thousands of fighters to help him. And now there was no one to send the fighters. So there was an opening, obviously, which Ashara used. They didn't understand how come they're coming in every place there's no one to fight. And they just kept moving from town to town with the full blessing, that's a diplomatic word, by Turkey. But Iran, understanding that their amazing, unbelievable investment in the axis. This is the axis. You have to have a continuum to supply Hezbollah. And that was going down the tubes. And so they had to rescue Assad. And what they did was they wanted to send 1 or 2 airborne divisions to help him. And we stopped that. We sent some F-16s to some Iranian planes that were making some routes to Damascus. They turned back. So being shed of any support from the West and any support from the East, the Assad regime collapsed. And just to make sure, we destroyed 90% of their armaments of the army. And then improved a bit our positions, like taking the summit of the Hermon Mountain. It's a very beautiful place. That's what we did. So in effect, if you summarize everything that I said up to now, what we did is we had peace going with the Arab world, Iran coming up, Iran putting a noose around our death, and Israel turning the tables on them from a situation where on October 7th people thought that Israel was doomed to making Israel the most powerful country in the region within a very short time. We could do that because of the incredible courage of our soldiers and our commanders. Incredible. Yeah. Just incredible. I mean, they're really the lions of Judah. I mean, they really fight. They're heroes. And those who are fallen are heroes. And those who are wounded, you should see the wounded. You know, there's a guy who lost his limb and 2 legs, and he has these, artificial legs and an arm, and he lifts another arm, he says, I want to go back and fight, and he's not alone. These are amazing heroes. So having done that, we've smashed the Iranian axis, but we didn't finish the job. Remember, there's still more to be done. We have to finish the war in Gaza, get our hostages back, and destroy Hamas. Hamas will not be there. And we're not going to put the PA there. Why replace one regime that is sworn to our destruction with another regime that is sworn to our destruction? We won't do that. I can say that Israel, in any case, will control the area militarily. We're not going to succumb to any pressure not to do that. And I very much welcome President Trump's plan to allow the voluntary relocation of Gazans who want to leave. And believe me, many of them want to leave. So what's left? Well, quite a few things and many opportunities. But obviously they'll all go down the tube if Iran gets nuclear weapons. The reason Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons is because successive governments under my prime ministership have led successive actions, which I won't discuss here with the same, forgive me, with the same detail over the years. And that set them back about 10 years from where they thought they'd be. 10 years ago, they already thought they'd have a nuclear arsenal. They don't. But we delayed them, but we didn't stop them. So they moved very far on enrichment. They're trying to move on weaponry. And the question is now what to do. Happily, we have a president in Washington who's committed, as he says, and as he said to me many times, including just recently, we can't allow Iran to have nuclear weapons. And I said, I absolutely believe that. Devoted a good chunk of my life to prevent that. But there are two ways to do it. One is to get a deal that would prevent them from doing that by dismantling their nuclear infrastructure. You have to dismantle their nuclear infrastructure. And that means not that they will not enrich uranium, but that they will not have the capacity to enrich uranium, which means you destroy the centrifuges, you remove, of course, the nuclear material that is already enriched, and there are a few other things that you have to do, but that's the crux of it. The real deal that works is a deal which removes Iran's capacity to enrich uranium for nuclear weapons. By the way, the only reasons you enrich uranium is to have nuclear weapons. There are dozens and dozens of countries who have civilian nuclear programs, and they don't enrich uranium. So Iran is constantly thinking, well, we have to find a reason why we're putting these things in bunkers under mountains, maybe for radioisotopes, right, for medicine, or for nuclear submarines. Give me a break. They enrich uranium for one reason and one reason only, and that's to make nuclear weapons, which they intend to use to destroy my country and threaten America. Once they have the weapons of delivery, ballistic missiles, ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, they will threaten every city in the United States. That is a palpable danger to Israel and to the free world, and it must be prevented. The way to prevent it is to dismantle all the infrastructure of Iran's nuclear program. That is a deal we could live with. Anything short of that could bring you the opposite result. Because Iran will say, all right, I won't enrich. Wait, run out the clock. Wait for another president. Do it again. That's unacceptable. Equally, I think we should bring in the ballistic missiles, the prevention of the development of ballistic missiles into the deal. I think these are the two requirements. I said to President Trump that I hope that this is what the negotiators will do. We're in close contact with the United States. But I said one way or the other, Iran will not have nuclear weapons. So we have a seven-front war, which is really a one-front war with Iran and its proxies. We appreciate the fact that the United States is taking action against the Houthis, very important. We appreciate the help that we're getting from the United States Arms are flowing in. It's important. We share the same goals, but we have to make sure that Iran does not get nuclear weapons. A bad deal is worse than no deal. We need a good deal. And the only good deal that works is a deal like the one that was made with Libya that removed all the infrastructure. I can tell you, well, you should applaud that. That's the main point. We have another front. It's called the deep state. You heard about that? No, you're talking about the deep state in America. It's very shallow. It's a puddle. Ours is ocean deep, even though somebody said it's a deep shtetl, but it's a deep state. It's a deep state. It's very deep. It threatens democracy. It abrogates the rights of citizens to choose their government that will make its own decisions, its own appointments. That has to be obviously resolved. But we have to understand that there's another threat on the horizon, and with this I'll finish because I think it relates to what JNS is doing and doing so ably, and that is puncture the lies. The lies are disseminated in America by a campaign, a systemic campaign, that is funded, organized by governments, by NGOs, that are funded also by very wealthy individuals. There's a lot of tourists in America. Yeah, a lot of tourists. There's a lot of tourists in Israel too. So what do? They pay influencers. They use the social media in a very systemic way to attack the supporters of Israel. And I'm not talking about only the supporters of Israel on the left. I'm talking about the supporters of Israel on the right. And that is a palpable threat to our future. We do not ask others to fight for us. We don't ask for boots on the ground, but we ask for that support. That support means that the UN Security Council does not make binding resolutions against Israel. It means that Israel is not sanctioned, is not choked by the international community. And that support is being threatened by the systemic public opinion campaign. And if there's one thing that has to be done is to fight back. That's what we do. We have to fight back. And you fight back with the truth. So I ask you to continue to fight for the truth. All of you do it in one way or the other. You should do it, well, you should do more, and more. Because we've learned in the long history of our people that if somebody says that they want to kill you, believe them. And these people who want to kill us enjoy the support now of young Americans who support our killers and our rapists and our would-be destroyers more than equally, as much as they support us. That has to be reversed. As fast as it came up, it can go down. But like in anything in anti-Semitism, people respect you only if you stand up for yourself. And the main thing is not to cower before our enemies here, not to cower before lies that are spread here and there, not to cower, to stand up and fight back. That's my message to you. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you. I don't want to disappoint the good souls in the Israeli channels, except 14. But the exact number of hostages that we released is 196, of which 147 are alive. So if you took notes, take that note. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a quick question for the audience. We started late because of the security, and we were very, very blessed to get an extended presentation from the Prime Minister beyond everything that we could ever imagine. And I think that that's a testament to all of you. However, we have some important dignitaries that came here tonight to address you, including a minister from Hungary, including several ambassadors from Latin American countries. I'm asking now, show of hands, who would like us to continue with the program? And afterwards, we will serve dessert and have a cocktail, so we will make it worth your while. If I can ask you to please take your seats. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I just had the privilege of traveling with the Prime Minister's delegation to the United States, where I was in the Oval Office with the President and the Prime Minister for an hour. And yet before we went to Washington, we went to what I think is actually one of the most important countries today in Europe, and that's Hungary. Hungary is standing at the forefront in the fight for restoring nationalist characteristics and against accepting illegal Muslim immigration, in strong opposition to a European Union that has harmed the continent and seeks to wipe out nationalism. Hungary has demonstrated steadfast support for Israel and recently announced its decision to formally withdraw from the International Criminal Court in protest against the arrest warrants issued for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I am pleased, very pleased, to welcome Hungary's State Secretary for Security Policy and Energy Security, Péter Stare. Péter, that is a tough act to follow. That is a tough act to follow.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a great privilege to be here tonight, but also a huge challenge to me to speak after Prime Minister Netanyahu. So please, forgive me. But I represent a country which is among the very few, sometimes the only one, that speaks up for the interests of Israel. And believe me, it's not easy. It's not easy when you're alone and you vote alone against biased decisions which are prepared by other countries in the European Union or in the UN, when just a handful of countries are voting together with the US and for the sake of Israel. Because all these organizations are very, very biased by now, and we have to continue this work together. Now, if you allow me, I prepared a few thoughts. Let me read this. So 2 weeks ago, April the 16th, we observed a Memorial Day for victims of the Holocaust in Hungary. And I had the privilege to address, on behalf of the government of Hungary, those who had gathered there. As I stood within the walls of the synagogue in Pava Street, I saw not only the leaders of the Jewish community, diplomats and state officials, but also survivors of the Holocaust and their descendants. I tried to express my gratitude for the staying power of the community and for the patriotism of those who still consider Hungary their home. On that day, we remember the time when no one stood up to protect the Jewish people from pointless hatred. Within the walls of the synagogue, through the silence of the remembrance, the echoes of that historical failure, of the inaction, the betrayals, could still be heard. And today, again, we live in a world where hatred is growing. In Hungary, we were deeply shocked by the brutal terrorist attacks of October the 7th, 2023. It was just 2 days later that I spoke at what was supposed to be a pro-Israel summit celebrating the Abraham Accords, to what quickly turned into a solidarity event with Israel and the Jewish community. On that day, I made many new friends in the Israeli and Jewish American community. I watched as many of them continued forward with the conference when I'm sure they were falling apart on the inside. Their strength on that day in Budapest was remarkable. And one of those friends is in the audience with here today. Is Brian Lead. Please, Brian. And Brian and I, we formed a bond immediately, and we have remained friends ever since. I told Brian and those at the conference that Hungary will stand with Israel even when the world starts to turn on you again. And ladies and gentlemen, sadly, after a brief wave of sympathy, the harsh reality emerged. Much of the world shifted to blame onto Israel, relativizing and even justifying what happened on October the 7th, relativizing and justifying the attacks by Hezbollah targeting hundreds of thousands of civilians in the north of Israel, relativizing and justifying the ballistic missiles attacks launched from Iran or Yemen. But Hungary has strongly resisted this wave of double standards and hypocrisy. Because we understand the importance of Israel's right to self-defense, Israel's right to protect its national identity and values. And we share these values and stand by them. We stand with Israel to call things by their name, to call a terrorist, and to call self-defense what it truly is, namely the right and duty of every sovereign nation to do everything in its power to protect its citizens. And we must not forget about the hostages. Among them, actually, there is one individual holding a dual Israeli-Hungarian citizenship, Mr. Omri Miran. We express our strongest solidarity and our conviction that peace can only be achieved through the release of all the hostages. Ladies and gentlemen, there is an important thing that Hungary is now well known for. our readiness to defend our Jewish community from betrayal and hatred. And the government of Hungary and Prime Minister Viktor Orbán personally have declared zero tolerance for anti-Semitism, an old phenomenon on a new rise in Western Europe and also in North America. And the results of the Hungarian government's long-standing fight against anti-Semitism are clearly visible by now. Our criminal code prohibits hate speech and the use of totalitarian symbols. And after the October 7th attacks, we did not allow pro-Palestinian protests to be organized because we clearly saw through Western European and American examples how such protests turn into anti-Israeli and anti-Semitic outbursts. Moreover, Hungary, often alone, stands up in the United Nations and the European Union against statements and initiatives to blame Israel. Arms embargoes have been introduced. Legal proceedings have been launched. The International Criminal Court has cast aside its impartiality and any rational legal argument in order to persecute Israel. So, it is no coincidence that Hungary has announced its withdrawal from the International Criminal Court. And it is not a coincidence that Prime Minister Netanyahu's only visit to a European country since the outbreak of the war was to Hungary. And I think this really reflects the depth of this friendship and of this alliance between our two countries and the steadfastness of our support. Hungary and Israeli bilateral relations have been steadily strengthening for a long time, one of their key pillars being the security and support of the Jewish community in Hungary. We are restoring synagogues and Jewish cemeteries. We take Holocaust education very seriously and develop curricula in close cooperation with the representatives of our Jewish community. Today, Budapest is home to the largest Jewish community in Central Europe, who can freely and safely practice their religion, wear religious symbols, and live their Jewish identity without fear. We call this the Jewish Renaissance in Hungary. And I can say with great pride that today Hungary is the safest country and the safest place in Europe for Jews. Ladies and gentlemen, a safe and stable Israel is vital not only for the Middle East, but for the entire world. We viewed the signing of the Abraham Accords as a significant and very innovative and very successful step forward, as it created new opportunities to strengthen peace and security in the region. We sincerely hope that Israel, the Middle East, and the world will soon return to the path of building bridges. And I would like to assure everyone in this room that Hungary will be among those nations who stand by Israel in this endeavor. Israel's security and sovereignty must be guaranteed at all costs, and you can count on the government of Hungary to remain your ally in this effort in the future as well. We are all patriots here, so let's continue our work and our fight together. Thank you so much for your attention.
That was unbelievable. Thank you so much, Minister. Some of Israel's most important and dedicated allies come from Latin America. Many Latin American nations host robust Jewish communities and have large pro-Israel evangelical populations. Some have been among the first to move their nation's embassies to Jerusalem. We welcome to the stage now Fleur Hassan Nahum, former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, current Special Envoy for Innovation for the Foreign Ministry. She's also the host of the JNS TV program, The Quad. She now leads a discussion with Panamanian Ambassador Ezra Cohen, Argentinian Ambassador Shimon Axelwanish, Paraguayan Ambassador Alejandro Rubin, and Guatemalan Ambassador Ava Atsum Arevalo de Moscoso.
Okay. Thank you all. Alex Trayman asked if you could wait until the cocktails afterwards. I said, why can't we just have the cocktails here? And then everybody would be very happy to continue staying. But I have the privilege of having on stage real allies. We just heard from Hungary, who are such incredible allies in Europe, but we have incredible allies in Latin America. And these wonderful ambassadors here on stage are not just Israel's allies, but they've become great friends and great friends of Jerusalem. So I welcome them all. Okay, so I'm going to start with Panama over there, only because, you know, we're good friends already.
I'm waiting for your mofleta.
Yes, my mofletas you already ate. And I have to say that they're a little bit upset because I'm a Spanish speaker. And the question was, why can't we have this whole thing in Spanish? But then I said there'd be 5 people here. So whatever we have left, we're going to do it in English. And I promise the ambassadors, if there's something heartfelt they want to say in their native language, I will happily translate. So that's the deal we made. Ezra Cohen, you are the Panama ambassador. You live in Jerusalem, even though the embassy is in Tel Aviv, but you know, we're working on that. But Panama was one of the first countries to recognize the state of Israel in 1948. I think they started on the cocktails. Panama was one of the first countries to recognize the state of Israel in 1948. How has this historic bond evolved over the decades?
Well, thank you very much, Fleur. When you build a building, it is very important the foundation. And the foundation started with the recognition in 1948. Then also, I'll share with you a secret. The Israeli Air Force started off in Panama. It was a Panamanian company. 3 planes came out of Panama. Those were the 3 planes. And then we continue supporting Israel from day one. So today, we have a solid building, a solid foundation, and that it will last forever. So that's why today we have so many things in common. Even though we are 2 little tiny countries, we share many things in common, and we share a lot of cooperation together.
What type of corporations, Ambassador?
For example, we have a crisis in water management. We have Professor Elo Nadar, who has spent 1 year, sabbatical year in Panama, to help us deal with the water situation. We have cybersecurity issues. Then today we represent cybertech. For the 7th year, we're the hosts of cybertech for Latin America in Panama, and so on.
So you're the hub of cybertech in Panama.
In Latin America.
In Latin America is Panama,
yes.
And this is knowledge you share with Israel and innovation that you share with Israel. Incredible. Alejandro Ruben Zimmerman, you're the ambassador of Paraguay, and Paraguay just moved their embassy to Jerusalem in January, and at the same time, we hosted and we welcomed your president, who came to Jerusalem for the opening of the embassy in Jerusalem. So I'd like to ask you, Alejandro, you've done an incredible thing, but what was the main motivator, do you think, for Paraguay's historic decision?
the truth and values. This
Values.
motivation, yeah. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to represent now Paraguay here. Why I say this? Because before that I became an ambassador of Paraguay. I was the honorary consul of Israel in Paraguay.
Oh my God, so you've done this 2 ways now.
Yeah. For 10 years I served a part of this without embassy. And then I was a kind of ambassador of Israel in Paraguay. And if you allow me, I want to tell about a little story about me, but no, it's not because I need to talk by myself, but because the relation makes sense. In that period, Israel nominated me 2013. When I came to Israel in that period, and I said, I am the honorary consul of Israel in Paraguay, the Israeli told me, where is Paraguay? And it's a painful, yes, because Paraguay maybe is a big friend of Israel. We support Israel in all international forums. But when I came here in January 23, something changed. The Israeli people start to ask me about the position of Paraguay with Israel. And I am Jew. I have chutzpah. And I say, Google it. Paraguay is one of the... Israel have a few countries that support like Paraguay, Argentina.
Yes.
In the international forums, you can see the vote in the UN.
Yeah.
Paraguay is there.
Yeah.
Even if just 4 countries vote for Israel, Paraguay is there.
Paraguay's always been there voting for Israel.
Yes. But now something changed. When we moved the embassy to Jerusalem, today the Israeli people told me, thank you. And this is a great feeling that I can say.
We're very, very grateful to Paraguay. And little known fact, we actually import a lot of meat from Paraguay, almost, or maybe more, the level of Argentinian meat. Not quite, not quite, but it's going to get there. And that brings me to our friends from Argentina, who, of course, the election of President Milei has done a real U-turn in the relations between Argentina and Israel. And we have the wonderful Rabbi Shimon Axel Wachnish as his ambassador. And he also lives in Jerusalem, and please God, very soon we'll also see the moving of the embassy as President Milei announced. But for the moment, Ambassador, what specific initiatives or projects do you believe will be key in the driver of growth between the cooperation between our wonderful nations?
We have falafel from Paraguay.
Falafel?
Yes. And shawarma from Argentina.
Shawarma from Argentina, okay. Yes. Next year you can cater the JNS conference, okay?
They want to eat, so.
That's right.
I think we are living in an historical moment between Argentina and Israel. It was something, a unique thing. It's the first time that Argentinian President Javier Milei says, our best friend is Israel. And also United States, but it's okay. We are.
We get it, it's okay.
Yes, we can. And he told me, and in every occasion he can say it, he says, it's not about a relationship, a partnership relationship. about who wins. I give you something, you give me something. It's about friends, like values of freedom and democracy. And you know, there were a lady in Argentina, a former president, that she signed a memorandum with Iran. After the 2 bombs of Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran put in Argentina, this lady signed a memorandum with Iran. And that's a mark, like a black mark for all the Argentinians. So I told the President Milei, let's do the same, but with the correct country. So in 1 month, he's coming here in June, and we are going to sign a memorandum of freedom and democracy against terrorism and anti-Semitism between President Milei and Prime Minister Netanyahu. And I think it's going to be an historic.
That's amazing. We very much look forward to having, again, because he came last year. He was the first country that President Milei visited after he was elected. The first foreign country, I think, was Israel. And we look forward to having him again with your leadership.
But it's going to be just the beginning.
Okay. What can we look forward to?
Oh. Did you like the Abraham Accords?
Yes.
Okay. Who was the son of Abraham?
Who was the son?
The son.
He had a couple.
the more Yitzhak.
Isaac.
Yitzhak. So President Milei, when he went to Davos, he started the speech, the West is in danger. So now I want to tell you, Latin America, it's a little bit in danger. And we have the responsibility to take care of this. So my dream is to start the Yitzhak Accords between Israel and many countries from Latin America.
Beautiful. Now that's a headline.
And maybe you can, yes?
They'll all sign up. Maybe one day they'll name an accord after one of our foremothers. I live in hope. All right. Now, the second country after the United States announced under the first administration of President Trump that they were moving the embassy to Jerusalem, the second country to say we're in as well was Guatemala. And I have here the incredible Ambassador Azul Marevalo, who does such incredible work. And I have to say that the ambassadors of the city of Jerusalem, the ambassadors who are in the city of Jerusalem, are also very much a part of the fabric of the city of Jerusalem. They come to events. They're very much part of our life in Jerusalem, as are you, Ambassador. So I'd like to ask you, as that country that made that very brave move, I always say the domino effect is actually not started for the first piece. It's actually started by the second piece. So my question to you, what were the main diplomatic, the motivation for Guatemala to take such a brave step when it was the United States who had announced, but you went right in there? Why?
Okay, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. But I don't know, but we have historic relationship with Israel. This history came from 1947, but this was not the first try to move our embassy to Jerusalem. In the 1994, the president of Guatemala called to make a note for in this moment the Minister of Foreign, Shimon Peres, and he want to move the embassy here, but in this moment we can't move. But it's the feel of all the Guatemalan people to stay here in Jerusalem. That's why in 2018 we have many reasons to be here, and I think U.S. is the example, was the first, and you say Guatemala was the second, because is the opportunity because all the Guatemalan people recognize in this holy land and this the city of Israel calls Jerusalem. That's why.
Well, God bless you. Guatemala are an incredibly God-fearing country. And I've been there, and everybody has this incredible feeling towards Israel, but it's still not simple. So what we see here are the representatives of 4 countries that are standing strong in what can be a very negative wave in Latin America against Israel. So in front of you, we have our allies in Latin America and the people really standing strong for the state of Israel. Maybe one last word from each of you. The year ahead, one sentence of what we should be expecting from our relationships.
With Israel and Panama?
Yes.
First of all, I'm working very hard on a direct flight, even though
yes,
Axel will not like it, but and we're selling not Panama, we're selling the hub of the Americas. So any plane that will come directly from Israel to Panama will connect all of the Americas. So
that's wonderful. So then we can hop over to Paraguay as well.
That's one. Okay. Secondly, we are working on centers of excellence of agriculture, which we already have 2, and we're planning to increment. Third, we are looking to increase cybersecurity and also security in all areas. And then continue strengthening the relationship between 2 countries. I've seen in the last 6 months that I've been here, this is an amazing country, and we have to learn so much of Israel. As I say, in Panama, we have the needs. Here, there are the solutions. Now our job is to take the solutions back to Panama.
Amazing. We look forward to doing that. Alejandro, maybe a little bit of what the year ahead, what you're going to be doing.
Does look Paraguay are surprised, and does who invest in Paraguay grow? We want to build together we will to build together a future with the Israeli people. But I can ask something for you.
Sure.
Recently, during the International Congress against anti-Semitism, the President Carter came here and said 2 sentences that I like a lot, and I want you, because you have a very good English,
to translate?
No, translate, to say.
To say it, all right.
The first and the second sentence.
Where are we? First, this is what your president said.
Former President Carter.
Former president. Israel does not need the world to tell it where its capital is. Israel knows where its heart is. And those of us who defend the truth know it too. God bless him. And the second sentence, when people try to deny Jerusalem as Israel's capital, when they tell the only Jewish state in the world that it cannot choose where to put its government, when they demand from Israel what is never demanded from any other country, that is not diplomacy, that is anti-Semitism. Well, thank you. Now we know why Paraguay is such a good friend. Rabbi, Ambassador, the year ahead, another flight directly to Argentina, perhaps?
We are going to announce it in the next 2 months, I think.
Wonderful. It would save me a lot of time.
Sorry.
It's healthy competition is a good thing.
1 week.
What?
We are going to move the embassy here to Jerusalem.
God bless you. Yes. You heard it here first.
It's not my decision. It's the decision of the President Javier Milei. So we are going to do it. We are going to open the direct flight. And I think the question is not what we are doing. I think the question is what you and every of you are doing, because here we have a unique opportunity, historical opportunity. So it's about everyone. What are we going to do with this new opportunity?
Well, thank you. And you're 100% correct. And in my position as a special envoy for trade and innovation, I will make myself available to anything Argentina wants from the State of Israel. We'll work on this together. Ambassador, the year ahead, Guatemala, Israel, what do you see coming? What are we going to be working on?
Okay, I think we have many things to do, but we started with the TLC, Tratado de Libre Comercio.
A free trade agreement.
Okay, these start in March, the 1st March, the last year in 2023. But for the while, we can do many things, but we have many things to do together because we want and we need to we need to work together. That's why, because it's in our heart to work with Israel and all the Israeli people.
Believe me, we feel the love from Guatemala, and I know that they're also bringing in excellent Guatemalan coffee to our supermarkets, so watch out for Guatemalan coffee. It is my privilege to have these wonderful representatives of their country on stage. God bless you all. God bless your countries. Thank you so much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in a moment we're going to have a final performance from Hagit Yasso. But before we do that, saving the best for last for the evening, a last presentation that's going to be worth your while. A visionary, an innovator, and a paramedic who serves as a bridge between unlikely communities and organizations, Gilles Gade is the founder and CEO of Cross River, a major fintech and financial services company that employs over 900 people worldwide and over 200 in Jerusalem, including many Haredim ultra-Orthodox. He also lectures extensively on anti-Semitism, and I am proud to present my friend and JNS partner, the president and CEO of Cross River, Gilles Gade.
Thank you for staying. After Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu's performance, I would say there's only one thing I could say that will stay with me forever. Baruch Hashem for Bibi. So good evening, everybody. And let me begin with a question that has echoed through the millennia, whispered through tears in dark corners of history, cried out in times of horror, and pondered in moments of reflections. Why the Jews? Why have the Jewish people, a teeny fraction of the global population, less than 0.002%, been the targets of so much hatred, violence, and persecution? Why have they been expelled, scapegoated, ghettoized, demonized, and murdered, not once, but again and again, in different lands, under different empires, religions, and ideologies? This is not just a historical question. It is sadly still very much a topic of today, and asking it is a quest to understand and to resist it. So why try to understand why we're being persecuted? Why Jew hatred? Why is that important? As Nietzsche says, a people can withstand anyhow, as long as it has the proper why. In other words, we as Jews can withstand any atrocity that comes our way, as long as we understand why we're being persecuted. The fact that we're here today is a demonstration of the fact that we know why we have been and continue to be the target of so much hatred, because we're still alive and well, vibrant as a community and as a country. We may take a journey through time and history to research the root cause of Jew hatred and determine whether these are actually causing anti-Semitism or just mere excuses, what we call in Greek literature the prophasis or the aetia. However, as history can attest, none of these pass the test of time and are just mere excuses. Just to name a few, The economics reason, the protocols of the Elders of Zion. Chosen people theory, scapegoat, deicide, we kill their God. Outsider, the dislike of the unlike. Race. But anti-Semitism is different than any other hatred. And there are four very distinct characteristics. First of all, it's longevity. Edward Flannery said, in The Anguish of the Jews, this is the longest lasting hatred in the history of mankind. Number two, it's universality. We've been expelled from 80 different countries over the last 17 centuries. Its intensity, 2 Holocausts over the past 400 years, the Khmelnytsky pogroms and the Shoah. And then finally, lack of specificity, confusion. You tap an anti-Semite on the shoulder and you ask him, why do you hate the Jews so much? Oh, because you guys are capitalist. You're also communist. You're powerful and weak. You're dominating and lazy, rich and poor, pacifists and warmongers, elitists and servile. You have a complex of inferiority and a chosen people mentality. What is it? But these 6 reasons that I mentioned before, they do have common denominator. They try to de-Judaize anti-Semitism. They have nothing to do with the fact of being Jewish. So there's one anti-Semite. This is Adolf Hitler, who said nonsense. He revealed that his hatreds were solely motivated by very much what the Jews represent: morality and conscience, goodness and kindness. He could not attack the message, so he wanted to get rid of the messengers, the Jews. Hermann Rauschning wrote a definitive book in 1939, London Press. He gathered some of the best and foremost Hitler speeches over the course of his political career. He was actually one of his speechwriters. And this is what Hitler says that he gathered. The struggle for world domination will be fought entirely between us, Germans, and Jews. All else is facade and illusion. Behind England stands Israel, and behind France, and behind the United States. Even when we have driven the Jew out of Germany, he remains our world enemy. Hitler goes further. He says, Providence has ordained that should be the greatest liberator of humanity. I am freeing man from the restraints of intelligence that has taken charge, from the dirty and degrading self-mortifications of a false vision called morality and conscience. And it's from the demands of a freedom and personal independence which only a very few can bear. Finally, last quotes I'm going to share with you. If only one country, for whatever reason, tolerates a Jewish family in it, that family will become the germ center for fresh sedition. If only one little Jewish boy survives, without any Jewish education, with no synagogue or no Hebrew school, it's in his soul. Now let us explore the resurgence of anti-Semitism and how it manifests itself. Starting in 1973 with the UN Women Conference in Mexico, Zionism equals racism equals Nazism. There was born a new excuse for anti-Semitism: anti-Zionism. However, today we're more educated, more informed, and the Shoah still reverberates as the greatest attempt in history to wipe the Jews off the face of the earth. So how can it take hold? And more so, continue to gain incredible forward momentum and credibility? I'd like to share something with you. Perhaps the last 30 years' vicious attack on Israel by the media and academia, particularly in Europe, is an exercise in Holocaust denial. In their perpetual attempt to rationalize everything, for 80 years now, European historians and scholars of anti-Semitism have tried to deny vehemently that a Holocaust ever existed. Came up short with any rational disapproval that the Holocaust existed. They never succeeded and never will. You know why? Because for one very simple reason: the burden of proof is overwhelming. Evidence that demonstrates that the Holocaust cannot be denied. But now, they don't have to try it anymore. They have developed a very sophisticated and coordinated campaign to justify the Holocaust, not to apologize for it. And it is called moral equivalence. You've heard terms like criminals, crime against humanity, resistance, massacre, genocide, apartheid, atrocities, occupation, Holocaust, extermination, ethnic cleansing, Jewish dead versus Palestinian dead. All these were terms that we once employed to decry what the anti-Semites had been doing to the Jews for centuries. These very terms are being used today by the Palestinians, the academia, and by the press the world over to define what the Israelis are supposedly doing to the Palestinians. It's called moral equivalence, and the double standard is absurd and repulsive. Syria murdered 20,000 people in Homa in 1982 and sits on UN Security Council, while Israel is the only country in the world not eligible for membership. But Israel kills Palestinian terrorists in a targeted and precise attack in self-defense, and it's called genocide. Today, the anti-Semites are saying, we don't have to deny that the Holocaust ever existed anymore. We don't even have to apologize for it, to worry about reparations. We're actually justifying it. You, the Jews, are capable of perpetrating the same atrocities that you claim you were once the victims of. That makes you the Nazis. That is why the scholars of anti-Semitism and Holocaust deniers are using moral equivalence. Now, if you remember, all the historians and the scholars are claiming that the Jews got a state in 1948 in compensation or reparation for the 6 million Jews who were exterminated in the camps. Let's look deeper into that for a second. If we got a state in return for the Holocaust and now realize that we deserve the Holocaust, then we still deserve a state? That's why they want to take it away from us. From the river to the sea, the new design of modern anti-Semitism is called anti-Zionism. It's not different. It's the same plain old Jew hatred, and it's working very well. What is our tradition? What does our tradition say? What is the cause of anti-Semitism? And we have, surprisingly, a very similar interpretation of Jew hatred. Our Torah and our monotheistic aspiration through Abrahamic heritage, morality, and conscience. The Jews are an ancient people, over 3,800 years in history, bound together not by land, not even always by language, not by faith, law, but by faith, law, memory, history, and a deep commitment to values, justice, family, value of life, education, social responsibility, peace, and hope. We gave the world the idea of ethical monotheism, the radical belief that there is one God who demands justice, compassion, and personal responsibility. And from this came things the modern world takes for granted: human dignity, the Shabbos, charity, the rule of law, and the idea that even kings are not above morality. So why the Jews? Because they are different. Because they hold on to their traditions. Because they wouldn't bow down to idols, literal or political. Because they were often literate when others were not. Because they prospered when others struggled. Because they refused to disappear. Because in a world that worshipped power, they insisted that holiness could be found in study, in peace, in the home, and in kindness to strangers. Israel is not only a safe haven for anti-Semitism, it is a platform from which the Jewish people could carry out its destiny. Be proud of Israel, not ashamed. Israel is an island of democracy in an ocean of theocracies. Where in the Arab world is there a spark of democracy, constitutionalism, laws independent of the ruler's whim, free inquiry, open dialogue and public debate, scientific development, made in cereal labels? But make no mistake, anti-Semitism is not a Jewish problem. It's a human problem. Israel is the miner's canary of the world, the historic test of a society's freedom. From Renaissance Italy to 17th century Holland, Edwardian Britain and modern America has been its attitude to the Jewish people in its midst. The greater its security, the freer, richer, and more advanced the nation. The more tenuous and contingent the freedom of the Jews in the society, the more certain, from the Spain of the Inquisition to Nazi Germany and Stalinist Russia, that darkness is encroaching. The anti-Semite cannot rewrite history, but they can create new ways to distort it. Let not be never again become all over again. Despite all of it, the exile, the pogroms, the Holocaust, the New York Times, CNN, the Jewish people survived. More than that, they're thriving. There are Nobel laureates, scientists, writers, educators, human rights champions, and defenders of the poor and the oppressed. The same people who broadcast justice, justice you shall pursue, gave the world Albert Einstein, Elie Wiesel, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Golda Meir, and Alex Trayman. People who have known every kind of darkness still light candles every single Friday night, not just to remember, but to hope and to remind ourselves of the days of creation and its purpose. So why the Jews? Because the Jewish people never stopped asking questions, because they never gave up on justice, because they saw education as the 11th commandment, because they hope for a better world and have the chutzpah to work towards it. Anti-Semite may ask, why the Jews with suspicion and malice? But I ask in awe, why the Jews? Because they remind the world that what it means to be resilient, to be ethical, to be human, particularly at a time when the world forgets. Thank you for listening.
Day one of the JNS International Policy Summit has been engaging and enlightening, and tomorrow promises to be equally important. I can tell you we have some amazing, amazing things coming for you tomorrow as well. So we appreciate your patience and your participation. But if you stayed until now, I think it's been worth your while. And wrapping up tonight's session with a beautiful melody, Chagit Yasso returns to the stage for a special performance to sing A Million Dreams.
Close my eyes and I can see the world is waiting up for me, that I call my own. Through the dark, through the door, through what no one's been before, but it feels like home. They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say I've lost my mind. I don't care, so call me crazy. We can live in the world that we design. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, our broadest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be. I'm vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. A million dreams for the world we're gonna make. There's a house we can build, every room inside is filled with things from far away. The special thing I compile, each one day to make you smile on a rainy day. They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say I've lost my mind. I don't care if they call me crazy. Run away to the world that we design. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, our broadest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the what the war we gonna make.
Enjoy dessert outside, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Dessert is upstairs in the lobby level.